I'd like to call the regular council meeting for the town of Bay-Westfield on Monday, March 13th, 2023 to order at 7:01 p.m. We respectfully acknowledge that Bay-Westfield exists on the traditional Woolastookwa lands. The lands of Wabanaki people are recognized in a series of peace and friendship treaties to establish an ongoing relationship of peace, friendship, and mutual respect between equal nations. The river that runs by our town is known as Woolastook, along which live Woolastookwa, the people of the beautiful and bountiful river. We, the staff and elected representatives, pay respect to the elders, past and present, and descendants of this land. Good evening, everybody. Municipalities are innovators. We must be, as we are the level of government that truly has its boots on the ground. From infrastructure projects to local climate resilience to developing safe and inclusive communities, we are constantly looking at ways to improve the quality of life for our residents in ways that are efficient, in ways that are equitable. We do this work in the face of significant challenges for local governments. I spent some of last week representing the town at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Board of Directors meeting. Having an opportunity to advocate for the federal government to deliver on key priorities for us, like infrastructure, climate adaptation and mitigation, housing, community well-being, it's key for the future of municipalities just like ours. We are responsible for the most essential public infrastructure, despite being constrained by a fiscal structure that is insufficient and outdated for the current realities we are facing. We are being expected to deliver more and more services. As part of FCM's committees, I'm able to give our town a voice to advocate for the next generation of core infrastructure programs that will help us be a vibrant and sustainable municipality. The next federal budget will be tabled on March 28th, and we hope it contains the following municipal priorities that we have been working hard for, such as the permanent doubling of the Canada Community Building Fund, formerly known as the gas tax, the creation of a new dedicated water and wastewater infrastructure fund, a permanent public transportation fund, increases to the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund to help municipalities like Bay-Westfield deal with the destructive realities of climate change, and a commitment to cover the retroactive RCMP back pay. I'm very proud that our town has a voice in these advocacy efforts and being a part of the team that works at the national level to make life better locally. Thank you. Record of attendance. Let the record reflect that we have a full roster of attendance with the exception of Councillor Day, who is on sabbatical. Item 5, agenda approval. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Bay-Westfield approve the agenda of March 13th, 2023 as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Bailmans. Do I have a second? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 6, disclosure of conflict of interest. Are there any? There being none, we'll move on to item 7, public hearings, presentations, delegations, petitions. 7A, Dillon Consulting, Municipal Plan and Zoning Bylaw, what we heard. And we have Jennifer Brown with us here tonight. Welcome, Jennifer. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to go through a very high-level review of the engagement results thus far. So I'm going to start it here. Just a bit of a project overview, just kind of as a reminder of what we're here for. The municipal plan and zoning bylaw need to be updated to include the new Ward 2 area. What that means is that your municipal plan will be updated to include policies that are in line with existing and future development Ward 2, future land use map updated to include Ward 2 as well. Same kind of thing for your zoning bylaw, include appropriate zoning for existing and potential development in Ward 2, as well as updating that zoning map to include Ward 2 as well. And the other opportunity we have here is to address pain points in either one of these documents. So if there's something that, you know, in facilitating development you run into as a major challenge, we'd like to take the opportunity while the documents are open to address those things now. In terms of process, so over February, March, we went through a bit of a data collection process, making sure that we understood what's happening in the new Ward 2 area. We collected community feedback online through a online dedicated survey. We met with staff to formulate some draft amendments. Through February and March, so at the end of February, we held an in-person open house. We're now at that second bullet, which is publishing the What We Heard report, and I'll be working with your development officer and additional staff to draft those amendments. You're looking at the second phase coming up here in April, where we'll look to finalize those amendments, publish them for public review and community feedback, and then you'll start your legislative process, hopefully towards May, June. Okay, so online engagement overview. It was kind of a two-pronged process. We had online engagement from February 3rd to March 6th, and then we had an open house at the Nerepus Baptist Church on February 28th. We had 2 time slots, 1 to 4 and 6 to 9. We had very strong responses from the community when it comes to the survey, online engagement at almost 500 survey responses, quite a strong push. A big shout out to the communications folks with the town, really did a very excellent job in getting that message out there. Also getting the feedback that we're hearing on your social media accounts back to me to process into kind of what we're hearing from the community. The open house, not exactly as much success in person as we had online. I will say we did have some really dedicated community members come through those doors and have very long and productive conversations with your development officer, David Taylor, and myself. We also were joined by almost all of the members of council at one time, so it was really helpful to discuss with council what we've heard so far on those online responses and what we've been hearing in the community, and for them to communicate with me what they've been hearing from their constituents. So, to give you an idea of kind of what we heard through the online engagement. So, 82% of responses were from Ward 1. We anticipated this. Folks in Ward 1 are used to being engaged with because they just finished an update to the municipal plan and zoning bylaw through 2020 and 2021. 61 total came from Ward 2. Some really interesting kind of couple additional statistics here. 229 of the people who replied, so almost 500 people, have lived in their current or lived in this community for over 20 years. 72% have lived in the area for 11 plus years. So we have, what the sample size is telling us is that these folks know this community, they've been here for a long time. 53% of the responses from residents were from folks aged 35 to 54, and then another 27% 55 to 64. So that represents kind of the majority, the biggest part of your population pyramid is really represented in the survey data. So, we've got a bit of a word cloud here. When we asked what the favorite parts of the Grand Bay-Westfield community were, we got this word cloud spit back out at us. So the larger words here indicate more frequency in responses. So the bigger the word, the more it was said. What's really resonating with me anyway, as I look through the data that's come through, both online and in person, is small town character, rural character, hearing that quite a bit. We hear a lot about your access to trails, access to parks, access to outdoor amenities. So this is not a surprise to me. I doubt it would be a surprise to any folks around the table as well as those watching at home. So in terms of, we asked residents to give us their kind of top priorities over the next 10 years. The reason we say 10 years is because the Community Planning Act requires us to essentially project policy over a 10-year span. Understanding that a plan and a zoning bylaw are both living documents and expected to adapt and change with the community, but we are attempting to establish a vision for the community over the next 10 years. So folks really came through with the increased housing types and options as a priority here, growing employment opportunities with climate change mitigation and an improved transportation network kind of falling into that third spot. So taking the lead from that first top priority. Just to give you an idea on how complex maybe the housing issue here is in your community. So 38% responded that they felt just okay about availability and affordability of housing. So when we asked them, okay, if you feel just okay, great ideas for improving housing affordability, tax relief, development of smaller housing types, development of multi-unit housing types. When we then asked what types of housing residents want developed, 67% indicated single dwellings. So the affordability conversation leans to the use of multi-units, but when they ask what they wanted, they want single dwellings. So there's a bit of dichotomy there, there's a bit of a balance that we need to strike through the zoning bylaw, which your zoning bylaw currently does very well, but because it's open up, we'll take another look to see if there's some opportunity to balance those kind of competing interests.
For Jennifer, municipalities like Lethbridge now require that they have to have, say, 40% of housing has to be affordable. Is that something that we ought to consider in the zoning bylaw, that in a given year that there's targets that we should meet, or given the tension that's here, is this something we should just probably roll along with and get what we can get? Because we can be intentional, or we just kind of accept what's coming down. I just wonder if you have a thought on that.
Yes, through you, your worship, to the CAO. It's a very good question. I think that there is a need for stronger housing policy in your municipal plan. There's limited mechanism for us to target affordability in your zoning bylaw. What we can do is kind of cut the red tape for different types of units. So if folks want to come through, for example, with a granny suite, a secondary suite in a typical kind of single detached dwelling neighborhood, we make allowances for that fit into the neighborhood. That's kind of the baseline expectation. As we move up and increase opportunity for density, we need to really look at, there being no limitations for the kind of size of the minimum ground floor size, for example. Minimum ground floor area has been used traditionally to say we only want units of this size in our neighborhood, to exclude renters and to exclude kind of innovation and creativity. Removing that type of measurement allows for some creativity in the market. When we talk about opportunities to address affordability, when I give those examples, I recognize that they feel very small scale. They feel very easily achieved. They don't feel very kind of dream big or blue sky. We put the blue sky actionable policies in the municipal plan, and then there's some component of we're gonna have to wait and see to an extent. Because right now we're kind of strapped in what we're allowed to do by the legislation to achieve affordability in housing. The best we can do is blow the doors wide open to allow for a development-friendly community, a process that is transparent and makes sense, and to create a culture essentially with your municipal plan and zoning bylaw that allows for developers to feel welcome and incentivizes them to build more units.
So do you see a path forward that we can do that this time around to make sure that it's there?
Yeah, I think so. I think we can do more than the bare minimum. I think that right now you're getting to it. I think that with some very simple updates, you can kind of, like I said, blow the doors open a little bit more, reduce that kind of perception of red tape. But then in the policy, you have a housing chapter that can be absolutely updated with some additional requests for actionable policies around affordability. Depending on the appetite of council, we can look at things like, committee mandates or some staff mandates or something along those lines. The unfortunate thing is I think a lot of councils rely on studies to get these things done. Studies take time, studies also cost money, there are some things that we can put in place now that should you be presented with funding opportunities, council has the ability to action that policy immediately.
Sorry, council, for being here. So we are a community that does not have deep pockets. Tax relief is very challenging here. Is there a way that we can incentivize development or land sales through the easing through of the zoning bylaw and stuff like that you can bring to council?
I think so. I think what we can look at, the kind of lowest hanging fruit is taking a very quick evaluation of town-owned property, for example, and town-owned property that would be reasonable to develop from a residential perspective. That's the lowest hanging fruit. The other is, looking at the zoning bylaw, looking at the zoning map in particular to upzone to allow for more density. I think people are very nervous about the word density, but there are some controls that we can put in place so that you can still get increased density of housing types while allowing for that rural character to still persevere. When we talk density, we're talking 3 to 4 stories along kind of a built-up area. River Valley Drive, for example, is your central commercial corridor. It can handle a 3 to 4 story multi-unit building. When we talk about your more dense neighborhoods, well, as you move out of a neighborhood, there's typically an allowance of space between the residential neighborhood and your major, well, in this case, highways. We need to upzone those to allow for more units. And that is part of the critical job that I have, updating your zoning map and your zoning bylaw to allow for more units.
Just to build on what John said, my understanding is there's some federal funding coming down the pike for doing exactly what you're talking about. Basically, some work on municipal policy to reduce the red tape.
Yes.
Do you know when that is coming to pass?
I don't know when it's going to land. I do know that your quickest mechanism is likely going to be updates to the provincial legislation around statements of provincial interest. It won't be funding, but it will be mechanisms to use the funding once it comes through. So I think putting those things in place is a really good way to you have the ball already moving once that funding lands. I think this idea of housing is a critical issue throughout the province. Every community I talk to, it's the top of their list. Councillors, it's the top of their list, but residents are very concerned. We have an aging province, you're in an aging community, people want to and deserve to age in place. Housing affordability is the #1 thing to do to allow the residents to stay in place. Putting unnecessary walls up through development process will slow that down. Your last council went through the process to kind of modernize your bylaws. Now we can be a bit more aggressive so that when things do come through, you're ready.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? So, like I said, just to kind of, again, on this point, I think it's a good indication of kind of where the community is. People know that the multi-units are when I say multi-units, I quite literally mean a duplex, a triplex, row houses, townhouses, and apartments. That's density. What we're seeing through the survey responses is that folks know that multi-units are kind of the option, but we're still dealing with some not in my backyard type attitudes where, we're going to have to break down that culture and try to incrementally improve. And we can do that incremental improvement through reasonable application of policy and regulation. So when we talked in the open house with folks about their vision for the future, it really was mimicking quite a bit what we're hearing through online engagement, which is very much a relief. It is concerning when you have an open house that folks are speaking in the face of what you're hearing online. That's not the case here. We're seeing, again, this greater variety of housing types. Folks are asking, remember that we're in the Ward 2 area, asking for improvements to park, recreation, and trail facilities. There's a real want to provide some connectivity between all of the trails that you already, value and have access to. A balance of rural character and commercial growth. I'm hearing this everywhere. People have chosen to live in these areas because there is that access to the rural character. We do want to see, obviously, improved economic development and opportunity, but not in the face of the rural character that folks hold so dear. And enhanced access to the river was actually quite a hot topic, I would say, at the open houses with the folks who did come through. And improvements to communication with residents. Remember that a lot of the folks in Ward 2 have not had a council before, or at least while they've lived in that community. Now they are part of one larger community and rolling out of information, which I believe Grand Bay-Westfield already does an excellent job at. There's now a big opportunity to engage with a new group of residents who have a new perspective on kind of town dealings and workings. In terms of hot topics, heard a lot about Lone Water Farm and the future of Lone Water Farm. Again, we can open some of this up in the municipal plan and the zoning bylaw to allow for flexibility. So should the province, whatever the province decides to do with that piece of property, you're ready to deal with it without a big onerous process. A lot of discussion around garbage collection services. I'll just take this opportunity because I know folks watching at home may also have this question. Through local governance reform, and I'm sure the information has been out there and continues to be out there repeatedly, contracts that exist are continuing to be honored. There's no immediate change. So garbage collection services, what you have right now will continue until those contracts are up.
Sorry. So the garbage collection services, was that
Mostly positive, because we're in Ward 2.
in Ward 2? Okay, because there's no change there. We do,
Yep.
I just wondered if we had those, if we had those questions from Ward 1.
We did have some comments around garbage collection in Ward 1. So several comments around they also want no change because there is a perception that an increased service delivery will equate to increased costs, will equate to an increased tax bill. That came through, I'd say there were probably a good 10 or so comments leaning in that direction. Does that answer your question? Great. So facilitating the development of affordable senior housing options. We're seeing this also through the online engagement commentary. Just a quick note, in the province of New Brunswick, we're not able to market specifically to an age group. So seniors housing exists only in the terms of an association with care. So affordable housing is really what we're talking about here, but I think this really speaks to my point earlier around affordable seniors housing means that there's a desire for folks to age in place in their community, and that's what we're really talking about here. Flood mitigation along Britton Road obviously came up, of no surprise to anybody. Enhanced access to the river again being a big hot topic, and expansion to the trail network. Okay, so when we talk about our next steps and timeline, we are really in the thick of it. Really have taken the last kind of couple weeks to dive into the online engagement results to see what folks are wanting. We've talked to David Taylor and I've had lengthy conversations around kind of these amendments. What's next is having your staff review the draft amendment. So we're targeting the end of this month, early April, to be ready to take the documents back out to the public. And we'll do that through the legislative process. There's a council presentation that initiates a 30-day comment period. That 30-day comment period is going to be very critical to allow for residents to come back to us with feedback, concerns. We'll be making sure that we work with your communications folks to get these documents out there and to get them out in a way that folks can consume them. I understand that not everybody wants to read a 40-page policy document and a 120-page zoning bylaw. You know, I don't fault anybody for that. So what we're going to try to do is, again, make these accessible, and the best way to make them accessible is to allow for people to call and ask questions, email and ask questions, and to have folks available to ask those questions. So just to reiterate here, so over the next month, we'll be working with staff to finalize copies of those amendments. The maps are currently in draft, amendments are in draft. We're looking over the next 2 weeks to have them prepared for public process. We'll prepare for legislative process and the associated public process, and then we prepare to share them with council and then with PAC. A note on the kind of legislative process. So I mentioned the 30-day comment period, that is a public process. We expect public feedback through that process. We take it back, we provide council with a list of proposed updates based on public feedback. Then it goes to PAC. PAC is an open meeting for the public as well to discuss further proposed changes. We expect that the public will be interested and want to participate in that as well. PAC provides a recommendation to council, then it goes to public hearing. Public hearing is also a public process where the public have an opportunity to speak to the documents and any proposed changes or concerns with those. So there's still plenty of public opportunity left, and we're really hoping that, you know, that 500 survey response is just a start. We're really hoping to get that number up through these next components of the process. So in closing, just want to say thank you, and thank you to the residents who have participated. The feedback has been very valuable and overall very positive. We're really looking forward to kind of getting those documents put back together, and they're currently kind of segmented out into a puzzle, put them back together and provide it back to the community for feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Council, do you have any questions for Jennifer while we have her? I just want to thank you for all the work. I know what it takes to put everything that you're doing together, and not only that, but present it in such a clear fashion so that everybody can understand. And I really appreciated the little bit at the end where you talked about all the opportunities there are for further public engagement. I think that's really key. And I want to shout out to our communications department, our communications officer Brock Belding, for doing what was clearly some heavy lifting, getting the word out. 498 online responses is absolutely incredible. So, you know, I think that that speaks to, you know, the great work that everybody has done. So hopefully everybody, you know, in town on Ward 1, and Ward 2 will continue to be engaged, and so that we can get the best document that we can at the end of the day. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So the motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file the information as presented. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Balco. And do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, Council. Item 7B, RCMP quarterly report. We have Sergeant Luke Sampson here with us. Welcome, Sergeant. Thank you for joining us here tonight.
Good evening, folks. I ran home, changed, let the kids come back. So I'm not in your report tonight. All right, there's a few things I want to discuss with you guys. Once that I touched base with, I'll wait till you're back because I'm sure you guys have a few questions. So this is the end of our fiscal year for us for stats and everything. I will have more details for you guys come the next month around the April 1st mark. Even before then, probably, which I will share with John, which I can share with all of you guys. Something to bear in mind for this fiscal period, a lot of our stats are lower in proactive work just due to our shortages. I want to reassure everyone in this room, and you can share this, staffing wise, we are not doing good as far as being staffed, but we are covered as far as overtime, as far as members taking the extra shifts and everything, things like this. We're just at the bottom of that slope right now. It's coming back up, just bear with me, it's happening. By the end of March, you're gonna have, just due to paternity leave, sick time, transfers, mandatory transfers, and incoming transfers. It's just that time of year where everything's kind of shuffled. It's happening. I can't stress enough, like, please trust me, it's happening. I know for the 5th or 6 weeks in a row, you guys were supposed to get Superintendent Dan Austin and Inspector Mark Maillet coming down to meet with you. Just due to the weather, every Friday's been a day off with the school, the roads are being closed, or that's completely out of control, but they are coming, they will meet you guys. I think I made enough noise to bug them enough to say we need a full-time staff front counter in Grand Bay, and I hear this daily, if not hourly. So I'm doing as much as I can to get that on the road for you guys. Hopefully I made enough noise to get that attention. In the scheme, in the timeline of the detachment as well, we're supposed to get our federal operations that are gonna move in at some point. There's no set time for this yet, it's happening. The reason I know this is real now is they're actually doing work at the office. Some renovations are being made, we got some cameras in cells, cameras outside. So they're doing some rentals, so it's real, it's happening. For all the time that they pay me lip service, I feel like something's actually happening. I want to reassure you guys that I do get complaints from John that would be voiced through you guys. If I don't respond to John directly, the person who made the complaint originally is being followed up with, sorry. For instance, last week we had I can't remember which one, it doesn't matter, we reported it, but we had the instance of a dog bite. The person didn't want anything done, but we followed up with them, it sorted up, but I got back to this person, right? And just to let you know, like, just because I don't get back to you guys directly, the person who made the complaint or who was the victim or whatever the case may be is being followed up with. To follow up on a topic you guys are discussing later, the curfews, the noise bylaw or the curfew bylaw, sorry. I'm a big defender of it. I think it's important. That being said, it needs to be rolled in such a fashion that we can enforce it if it comes to this. Like I've said since I've been in Grand Bay for July 2021 now, the goal is not enforcement, it's education before enforcement, right? I don't want you guys to be notorious at a curfew like this is prison, right? It's just, that's not the goal. However, it is a great tool for some of the, I wouldn't say minor nuisance, but like, as opposed to going criminally with someone, maybe you can use this bylaw to our advantage. The real issue though, that I would see would be to make the curfew too early in the night and the evening, and to sell it to people that think this is you're going to jail card, because it's not the case. And this is really important because we're going to get certain people that are going to call our office saying, well, it's just curfew now, how come this person's not locked up? That's not how this works. I just want to make it clear so I'm not inundated with a bunch of those complaints. I still don't know when Julie is coming back. She's still seconded to media relations. We've not lost, but due to transfer, Constable Knox has been transferred to the integrated, good for him, he got the New Brunswick integrated enforcement unit in St. John's, a unit composed of KB Police, St. John Police, us, and Department of Security. So it's good, but we are getting those bodies, we just have to bear with it. It's been kind of a tactical nightmare for me, and a nightmare to try to navigate through this. I'm doing my best, but I want to reassure you there are police officers in your town, day in, day out, that are here to make sure you guys are safe, but the community is well looked after. That will never be an issue under my watch, so I make sure people are here. Pretty much all I got for you guys tonight, unless there's some question.
Thank you, Sergeant. We appreciate your advocacy on our behalf, and it's exciting to hear that we're heading in the right direction toward getting the detachment staffed full time. I know that's been a real challenge for people, and it's a barrier for things like dial-a-ride when people need to have their criminal record checks done and they're unable to get it done because the detachment is either closed or they go on their lunch and the person there is on their lunch. So it's been a real challenge there. So that's very good to hear. Council, do we have any questions for the sergeant? Deputy Mayor Toole?
A quick one, sorry, you were mentioning you mentioned some comments about the curfew bylaw. Is it the same comments you had with the noise bylaw, that you're, same thing?
Same
issues?
It would be the same, the bylaws would be on the same, the thing to understand is we primarily enforce criminal code, right? So let's say a noise complaint might be initially started with a criminal code, but if you do a noise bylaw or a curfew bylaw, that may be something, a lower threshold we can use as opposed to escalating this criminal code charge. Not only that, but maybe the threshold to prove a criminal code charge might be a little higher, as opposed to being a fine to the town of Grand Bay for either noise, curfew, or whatever bylaws you guys would have in place that we can actually enforce.
get a lot of the noise complaints too now through the current rule?
We've had a handful of noise complaints that are more frequent flyers, should I say, but it's not a super common thing that we get, at least not on my end. Like if it comes to the town, that's one thing, but for the reported police, it's not something, literally we don't hear it there.
But if somebody calls us to ask, we would say we would refer them to the RCMP, like if I.
No, and by all means refer them,
Okay.
but I'm saying you don't.
You don't, yeah, cause I've
You
just
don't
had a
get
couple people ask me about, there was ATVs late at night at 3, 4 AM, they were wondering where to call, so it would be.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I can't stress enough, like, this is huge for our stats, just like a survey, like the previous person who was presenting is, if we don't get files reported, well, we can't build stats, right? I'd rather have more calls to say, like, look at all the stuff we're having, this is why we need more members, this is why the community's, not to say the crime is rampant in Grand Bay, but enough to say that we have enough to justify more members or more backup or so on and so forth.
Any other questions for the sergeant? Well, thank you very much. We appreciate the hard work that you're doing, and again, the advocacy. I know it's difficult when you feel like you're not being heard sometimes, but you're working hard for us, and I appreciate the fact that you're making sure that we're covered in terms of members, even though our official staffing levels are not what they should be. So.
Trying. There's something else I want to cover off. I wish I had a sweet PowerPoint, but don't be alarmed as well. Just in case you see that in the stats, and I want the River Valley Middle School. I want to commend I know she's not here tonight, but the Sasha Kumia, the principal there. She is doing amazing work. Not sure if any of you guys work with her or like have any relationship with her, but I assure you, we've been getting an influx of calls on some types of file from the school. Not necessarily negative, and I don't mean to bash previous management or whoever was there first, but I think a lot of issues that were just not addressed are finally being addressed. But that's how I'm seeing it from my end of things. Not to go in details of the types or nature of calls we're getting there, but she is doing fantastic work to address issues that, I think things that they might not escalate all the way to a court case, but enough to draw our attention to it so that the children at the school are safe. And the people that, maybe not things that might be occurring at the school, but things that might be kind of coming from the home area is looked after properly. So again, I can't stress enough how she's doing a fantastic job.
That's good to know. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yep.
Yeah,
But no,
really great.
that's, I know we're meeting again, or I'll have a little meeting for you guys in a couple of weeks.
Next Monday.
Next month, I knew that, I'm just checking with you. But yes, it will be the format to this. I don't want to step on the toes of the superintendent that's coming as well. I forget the.
I think it's now March 30th, so book that as a storm.
Well, and don't get me going. I'm going to tell you stories from my grandpa when he went to school, and I feel like that's what I was like in Manitoba. Here it's raining and it's 9 degrees in school. But anyhow, that's later here. Moving on. That's all I got for you guys tonight, unless you guys have.
Actually, I have one question just to build on what the mayor was asking. So just to confirm, is there still just staff there on Wednesdays for things like criminal record checks?
Yes. And thank you for mentioning criminal record check again. One of the last HR meetings or ops meeting I went to in Moncton 2 weeks ago, sorry for not bringing this up, I completely forgot. Some of the criminal record checks are going online finally. Apparently that's a thing. Don't quote me on this, but anything that has to do with vulnerable sector checks, so school bus driver, nurse, anything that would have to do with any vulnerable people, you still have to go in first. Now, I don't want to be, I'll be extra positive, but I think the meeting that is coming forward in a couple of weeks for you guys with the superintendent and inspector is in your favor as far as increasing that level of operation of the office. I hope so. I'm really, I don't want to say wishful thinking, but so far it's only on Wednesdays. When the current person who's coming on Wednesday can't make it, if I know ahead of time, like if she's sick or something like that, I try to replace her with someone else that I can pull from somewhere else.
So it's Wednesdays from 9 to 4?
9 to 3, I think it
9
is,
to 3.
because where that person's seconded here, I can't count her as a full day, I gotta account for travel time.
Okay.
That's technically out of my.
And then lunch from 12 to 1?
That's correct. And if the lunch is different, I try to share this ahead of time again. But it's normally the time frame, because it is more convenient. I get people calling me personally asking like, hey, I'm on my lunchtime, can I come on? I understand that 100%. You guys are busy. Everybody's got a busy schedule. and as a final opportunity to get that done.
If there are no further questions, thank you very much, Sergeant. We appreciate the work that you do for the town and everybody that lives within it.
Thanks, folks. Have a good evening.
See you later. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file the information as presented. So thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, council. If we could make a quick change to the agenda with the consent of council, if we could move item 11E, local 2404, a collective agreement, down to just below minutes of previous meeting. We have the representatives here, and it would be nice if we could execute that item and not make them sit through all the buttons.
Unless Peter really wants to sit through the bylaws, and Jeff?
Am I on camera?
Do I have the consent of council to make that?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much. So I don't know what we would number that.
We just moved it, that's all.
You just moved it.
It's just one of those things where we're allowed to, discretion, move things around. We don't necessarily have to make a mark of it.
Okay, well, thank you, council, for that indulgence. We will now move on to item 8, minutes of previous meeting. 8A, regular council minutes of February 21st, 2023. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of February 21st, 2023 as presented. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. Do I have a second? Councillor Bellamy, thank you. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. We'll move on to the QP local number 2404 collective agreement, and John, could you speak to the item, please?
Yeah, first I just want to thank Peter and Jeff. We spent, I forget which day in November it was, discussing the contract. It was a good discussion. And then we've been trying to clear up a few things. That's why it's taken so long to get here, to make sure everybody was on the same page. But yeah, we both tried to update the agreement, and we made some changes. And I'll just give council and members of the public some highlights. This is a short agreement, just 2.5 years. The reason that we agreed on a shorter agreement was there's a lot of economic uncertainty, primarily around inflation. And then also snow removal and ice control. And we wanted to see how things worked, without committing long-term for either party, so that it wouldn't adversely affect both of us. And I do want to say I do come away from meeting with Peter and Jeff feeling that their hearts are for the town as well. The financial terms are 4.5% increase for 2023, and then 4% each for 24 and 25. Another huge change is that the previous contract, grievances could potentially come to council. That is highly unusual, very irregular, definitely not a best practice. So that's no longer the case. If they disagree with the work superintendent or the works commissioner, then they come to me with the issue. And if we still can't solve it, then it's arbitration. We've also taken steps that, recruitment and retention. We want to ensure that the town is a good place for everybody to work. That includes culture and ensuring that we have a statement on culture, which includes a corporate culture of kindness, professionalism, continuous learning, and pride. And also there's monetary steps as well, so that at years 3, 9, 15, and 25, employees will receive $600, $900, $1,200, or $1,500 lump sum payments, just in recognition of their long-term service. The other thing I'm grateful that the union allowed us to do, and we're currently doing this, is that we can now post jobs At the same time, both internally and externally. Before, I used to have, the town would have had to post it internally for 2 weeks, so we have to wait for that and then go external. Now we post them internal, external at the same time, and of course, union representatives get interviewed first. Bereavement leave is now the industry standard of 5 days rather than 3. And then clothing allowance hadn't been changed through a number of collective agreements. I'm not going to say years, I'm just going to say number of collective agreements, and we increased that. I feel that it's a fair agreement. I hope that the president and vice president feel the same way. There are some things that I wish I would have had different, but we bartered in good faith. So the net cost to the town on a per annum basis is $80,000 with the financial changes to the collective agreement. So I'm just asking council to approve the collective agreement that was negotiated in good faith with QP local number 2404. Peter Jones is the president and Jeff Coy is the vice president. And they're both here tonight.
Okay, well, thank you, John, I appreciate that. Council, do we have any questions or comments for the CAO? I'm gonna go over here to the motion.
Yeah, just that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield approve the collective agreement negotiated with QP local number 2404.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, so what is, like, everybody had a motion, that's good, so we'll go with Councillor Malcolm. Are you comfortable with having the first motion?
Absolutely.
Yes, and I didn't catch that, Deputy Mayor too, okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you to the president and the vice president of the union. I just wanna, and to our leadership staff, I wanna thank all of you for your dedication, the spirit of collaboration, and the clear commitment to service for the residents of our town in bringing this agreement to completion. I'm very proud of everyone that works for the town and just the spirit with which this whole negotiation was held in. So thank you very much.
Can we just take a couple of minutes and Peter and Jeff would like to sign over here.
Absolutely.
Peter, Jeff, you want to come on up?
Scratch.
Do you wait? So, and then are you gonna send it to QP or are we?
No, I think if you want to, you wanna make some copies.
Oh, there's one for you, one for QP, one for us.
I can take one time.
Who sent it? Maybe you get two, one for QP, one for you.
Yeah.
Which, who sent it to QP?
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Yes, so we have
sign.
Oh, we have more to sign? Good part for next year, yes. We can do that again.
Yeah, take it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead and restart.
Awesome. Get this filled in. Today's date too.
Yeah, well,
Fall over.
Good.
Trap there. This one right here. I think Jeff still needs to sign on that side. Yeah. Yeah, you're right there and right there.
Mr. Peter. There's one page on that. Yeah.
The sign is still signed. All of them? There. Yes, it's like musical agreements here.
Not looking for something. Sorry, Peter.
That's what I hear. Legendary St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, that's right. Take two of that.
Alright, thanks again. Thank you very much. Thanks again.
Good night.
Okay, we'll see you there.
Thanks for letting us do it.
No, we wouldn't wanted, them to stay here through all the rest of that agenda, so that was a great suggestion, thank you. Okay. So again, thanks to staff and to QP for such a great process and a great result. So we'll move on to item 9, unfinished business. There being none, we'll move on to item 10, bylaws. Before we launch into the bylaws, I'm going to give the floor to the CAO for a bit of a preamble on what we're doing here this evening.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think we have 10 or 11 bylaws this evening for first and second reading. And I just want to make it clear that this is a requirement of local government reform to ensure that there's uniform bylaws throughout Grand Bay-Westfield, which includes Ward 1 and Ward 2. And really, this is a discussion between council about what do you want. My job is to bring forward bylaws that, may work for the town, and they're subject to tweaking. And administration, we are open to, hearing what you have to say, and then can it be incorporated or not at the end of the day. We're here trying to implement your vision of the community, which includes through the bylaws. And the bylaws really have two purposes, public health and public safety. And you may want to debate that. It's also about creating a healthy environment between neighbors. And for an example, you don't necessarily want a mill across the street from a school or a subdivision or something like that. And then finally, well, not finally, but there's a couple of points I want to make. Bylaws are also, we have them because typically, historically, they're a response to issues. And sometimes the issues persist over time. Sometimes they don't. So an example, a bylaw that we're bringing forward tonight that should be repealed is Sunday shopping. That used to be an issue. You go back a generation or two. Today it's less of an issue. So we're suggesting, well, maybe we need to repeal it. But there are other bylaws that we may still need to keep. But that again, council may decide, well, I want to, why do we need curfew? The sergeant spoke to that. Council can decide, well, we want to repeal it. Is it needed or not? So that's council's discretion. And then some of the things that we've really tried to do is we can't rewrite all the bylaws. We just don't have the budget for that. What we have tried to do through David, myself, and our solicitors is clean up the language and modernize it. For an example, you go to some communities, they may have a hawkers and peddlers bylaw. We have, pardon me? Yeah, transient traders. a suggestion, put forward by the deputy mayor is why can't it be temporary businesses, right? Or something like that. But we're open to suggestions. And then finally, one of the bylaws we're introducing tonight is the administrative penalty bylaw. And then also people are aware of the Provincial Offences Process Act, POPA, where, we impose a fine on a bylaw, the money goes to the province, administrative penalties can come to the town. And I just want to say, both for the people watching at home and for council, our job, or the way I view our job as CAO, is that fines and penalties are not revenue generators. Licenses are not for us to bring down the tax rate. License fees are to cover our costs of doing something, so it's a user pay system. If you need something, you pay for that service. It shouldn't be my neighbor 3 doors down, has nothing at all to do with whatever it is you're doing that you need a license for. So it's just about cost recovery. That's what license fees are about, cost recovery. Now, penalties and fines. Again, at the end of the day, sometimes we need to compel our neighbors to comply with the bylaws. But we don't want to jump immediately to fines and penalties. We do not want to plug our financial hole with fines and penalties. Really, the philosophy that I followed as CAO is that, first off, we want to inform our neighbor, hey, this is what the bylaw is, and would you please stop doing whatever it is you're doing? Well, then the neighbor still keeps doing it, and we have to go call a visit and say, look, here's the bylaw, here's why the bylaw is in place, this is the outcome that we're looking for, would you please comply? And then finally, we get the third complaint, sorry, here's the fine, pay up, and we're gonna keep fining you until you do comply. That is not the way we want to do business at all. You know what? A bylaw officer or an animal control officer who walks around, pets your dog on the head and says, oh, all the animals are tagged. Oh, look, we have no nuisance yards. That is a great bylaw officer. We're not getting fines and we have a great community. So at the end of the day, that's really what we're looking for. But, before we get to fining, there's 2 steps first. We inform them and then we educate them. And so that's just my little preamble, Your Worship, regarding bylaws. We're not trying to fill our coffers. All we want to do as a last resort is ensure compliance with the bylaws, because the bylaws are there at the end of the day to ensure public health, public safety, and that we have good relations between neighbors, which unfortunately doesn't always happen.
Thank you very much, John. We'll move on to the first one. I'll read the motion, then I'll get you to talk about any specifics and we'll open for questions. 10A, the motion is that the Council of the Town of Bay-Westfield adopt by summary and title in the first and second readings of the following municipal bylaws. A, respecting administrative penalties bylaw. First reading by summary. The purpose and intent of the administrative penalty bylaw is to identify fines, fees, payment period, early payment discounts, and general information pertaining to any bylaw that authorizes the municipality to require the payment of an administrative penalty. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. John, if you want to speak to the specific bylaw?
Yes, Your Worship. This is a bylaw that David tried drafting and then we turned it over to our solicitor. And I want to commend David. The province, when we set in some bylaws for their feedback, said that one of the things we have to do is have an administrative penalty bylaw. David, being diligent, said, well, can I have a template? Or can you point me in the direction of a town that does have an administrative penalty bylaw? And he said, well, no and no. So I just want to compliment our solicitors for coming up with the administrative penalty bylaw. I know when I talked with other communities, I'm not sure that I agree with the method that they did it, but they just include a clause within their bylaws. But when both Dave and I read the act, and I think if I recall correctly, it's section 156, right? It says that you have to have a bylaw listing the bylaws that have an administrative penalty. And so that doesn't cover it. So what we're trying to do is comply with the province. Again, your worship, we're the tip of the spear in developing something. And so I'm bringing this to council. This is a request by the province. The reason that we have to do it is all our laws were grandfathered into the Local Governance Act. They're made under the Municipalities Act. And so now they're subject to a different jurisdiction which needs the administrative penalty bylaw. This is one of those, we have to have a bylaw if we're going to charge penalties. And just for those at home, again, as I said in my preamble, we don't want to compel compliance. That's not what we're trying to do. But also, if we do have to do it, we're going to give you an opportunity that if you pay within, I think it's 14 days, the penalty is halved. After 14 days, you pay the full amount.
Thank you, John. Do we have any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, council. Second reading by title. Bylaw number GG-007, respecting administrative penalties. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Balcom. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you. Now we're on item 10B, respecting animal control bylaw. First reading by summary. The purpose of the animal control bylaw is to ensure the health and safety of the residents of Grand Bay-Westfield as they interact with animals. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Bellmans. John, can you speak to the bylaw, please?
Your worship, the dog control officer really struggled with the last bylaw that we had. So we've gone in a new direction. And this is a bylaw that I wrote when I was in Saskatchewan. I want to apologize to council that I think there's a couple of Saskatchewan references in it that weren't taken up before I went on holidays. However, the intent here is to ensure that we have animals that we understand if they're rabid or not. That's why we ask people to register their dogs. Kids get bit by dogs. And, to take a kid to a hospital because we don't know if the dog has had its rabies shot is not fair to the child. So when we ask for dog tags, it's not because we want to count dogs and do a census. It's because if there's an incident with a dog bite to an adult or a child, we can check the dog's tag and confirm whether or not it's had its shots. So that's just one example of things that we want. We do address issues that are maybe ethical, such as how long can a dog stay tethered up, things like that. We address dog bites. We address nuisance dogs. For an example, the neighbor comes home, it's 8 o'clock, they're going to bed, and the neighbor's dog is outside barking all day long because they're unattended to. That's unreasonable barking. The neighbor needs to be able to sleep. So we address things like that, and of course dangerous animals. And there's some animals that should not be kept. There are some snakes. I don't recall what other animals are in here offhand, but there's some reasonable expectations as what's a reasonable pet or not. The thing that I wasn't able to put in here, but our zoning bylaw actually speaks to animal control more broadly speaking. So what we need to do with this that's not in here is import that into this bylaw. And I don't remember the specifics, but for an example, a person may have 3 dogs, 3 cats, and I think it's 3 rabbits. So you're allowed 9 animals, just no more than 3 of any particular type of animal. Again, council can decide that, people can have 4 of each or 5 of each. That's your discretion. All I want to do is give you a starting point here. However, if you change the number of animals, we have to change that in the zoning bylaw. and those numbers will come to generally. So this is just a starting point for council. The other thing that the dog control officer brought to my attention, which surprised many of us, is that we have a feral cat problem. This is not something that I knew of, and other members of the leadership team were, what? We have a feral cat problem? We weren't aware of that. So, so we have put in there a tool to address feral cats. That is tagging cats and keeping cats tethered up or on a lead. And I know it's not common in Grand Bay-Westfield, it may not be common in New Brunswick, but if council wants a tool to address feral cats, this is the way we do it. If council feels that we don't have a feral cat issue, then we take those clauses out that address cats. But I heard we have a feral cat problem, my job is to counsel the tool. You can disagree with the dog control officer, that's council's prerogative. The issue around cats, having them tethered up and tagged, that's to deal with feral cats. Now, having said that, cats can cause an immense amount of damage. Unfortunately, I saw one resident where the neighbor's cat caused $3,500 damage to the house because they sprayed inside a screen door. And then another neighbor's cat, a different neighborhood, destroyed somebody's garden by, it's a kitty box. So cats aren't innocent. Culturally, we look at cats as half domesticated, half wild. But anyways, those are some brief highlights, Your Worship, of the animal control thing. Animal control bylaw, not the animal control thing, my apologies. But we've tried to be somewhat comprehensive about it. There is one thing I would like to add in here, which we discussed today as a leadership team, is that that maybe horses should be included on stoop and poop, or stoop and scoop. It's not just dog poop, but perhaps horse manure too should be scooped and stooped and scooped. So.
Thank you, John. So I'll open the floor to council for questions or comments on the bylaw as presented. Deputy Mayor Toole?
I was kind of taken aback by this one when I read it, because it's very, very different from what we have. And I think it's just, we haven't heard from the dog control officer. I know you're telling us now, but the first I heard of these was in response to looking at this going, I wonder why these changes, and now we're hearing from. So just when we have this big of a change, I kind of like to know why, and almost have like a bit of maybe have the dog control officer here to let us know what's going on and where the concerns are. Because like I've lived here for over 10 years, and I think the main concern I've heard from people is just the dog poop. That's for animals, that's what I've heard. I think I've had one person in all the time I've been here talk about a dog, like a dog running loose, but that's only been one. But the 99.9% of the time it's dog poop, and it's not enforced now. Like it's still out there, it's still a problem, but we're adding all of these things on here that I, as a longtime resident, haven't heard of. So if they are concerned, the animal control, the dog control officer has them and knows about these, if she could kind of come and let us know about them, kind of the rationale behind it. I'm not against anything per se, it's just this came as a bit of a shock, because I didn't realize that all these issues, and there's lots of cats around my house, and the occasional dead bird, but it's kind of I didn't know it was a huge issue. So this, I think it goes a bit too far in a lot of ways, just because I don't know, so maybe if we hear from the dog control officer, that might be a bonus. Like there's the licensing of cats, I really don't know how that would go over well. There's a maximum animal amount in here that I guess you said is different from the current.
Yeah, so it'll be 3 dogs, 3 cats, 3 rabbits, 6 chickens.
But right now, doesn't it say 3?
It says 3.
That's what I said, that's one of the things we have to change.
Okay, I was gonna say 3, and then there's like, there's leash length, there's other, like, if a lot of things in here, I think would require a huge amount of public education to make sure that's there, and I think other people would hear, if I was to say, look, we're making all these changes, their comment's gonna be, nobody enforces the dog poop, it's the biggest rule now, so why are we making all these changes if we're not dealing with the one issue that seems to be? So that's kind of my thoughts. I'm not a huge fan, I'd rather hear from her and we can kind of talk about the issues and get an idea of what's going on before we make big substantial changes. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole.
Just response to dog poop. That is one of the toughest things to enforce. You have to catch them in the act, and it's not the dog's fault.
No,
it was us.
it's the person's fault.
So, like, we can have someone work 24/7 to enforce that, but we can't.
No, but it's the same with, if we make all these changes, it'll be the same issues. Are we gonna have somebody working 24/7 to run around and chase every cat they see and find the house? Like, are we making rules we can't enforce, is kind of my.
This is a tool that if council thinks there's a feral cat issue, we can address
Then we need to kind of hear about the feral cat issue first.
Know what a feral cat is first.
it. Wild.
Well, just,
Wild.
yeah, cats that run. And
I've never
it's
seen
funny,
a
it's like,
feral cat.
I'm a new dog owner, so I'm kind of, I was realizing I've been reaching leash length for 6 months and not having no idea, so little things like that, it really needs education, like there's certain things, I did inform myself, I licensed my dog, I looked at certain aspects of it, but like I have 2 cats and my cats are indoor cats, but it's like I didn't, like all these certain aspects of it, I'd be like, oh. To me, it's a bit much, but just my side.
Thank you. Councillor McIntosh Lawrence?
Yeah, I agree with Deputy Mayor Toole. I don't think this is something that we can decide on tonight. I think it needs to be a lot more discussion, and it would be good for the animal control officer to come and speak to us.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Balcon?
Thank you, Your Worship. I fully agree having the animal control officer coming, but I'd also like to maybe ask the CAO if he could check with some of the other neighboring municipalities to validate if they also have a feral cat problem. I haven't seen a cat since I've been here 25 years, and I haven't heard anybody mention about feral wild cats. And I'm up at 2 and 3 in the morning sometimes myself, so outside with my dog, I don't see any or hear any skunks, yes, but not cats. So if we're going to have the information on which to make an informed decision, let's also find out and quantify if our neighbors also have and what they've done.
Thank you, Councillor Balcon.
There's 3 running cats around, but I don't see them. I know the foxes get them in the middle of the night. If they don't go back to their homes, the fox will get them. So I don't see a feral cat problem myself in Grand Bay. I see just they're running around. They go back home after dark or when they're hungry.
Thank you, Councillor Dolan. So I think what I'm hearing is that we want to have, I guess, the animal control officer come and make a report to council, and then have further recommendations based on that report. Is that what I'm hearing?
So some of the lengths, dogs outside and stuff like that, that's per SPCA stuff. But yeah, I would encourage council to do at least the first reading so we can get it,
Yes, good idea.
get it
Start
going, get the
routine
process
too.
going.
Yeah.
That's, you know, and you know, it's been, maybe I should have said the preamble, but I know I said it before. What it looks like in the first reading is not the same as the third reading, so just, this is a change process, this is part of it, so we'll do our best to ensure that council gets the type of bylaw that they want, but the last one really wasn't working the way that dog control officer said.
Yeah, and that's important feedback to know, you know, that we're not giving her the tools that she needs to do her job properly. And yeah, I just think that what I'm hearing is that council's a little uncomfortable with like the big change from, you know, from the initial one to this one, which has a lot more meat to it.
I guess I just want to add too, the dog control officer has been trained to deal with other types of animals as well, so bees, poultry, and livestock. So, and she's willing to expand the scope of her contract to accommodate this. We haven't budgeted for that change for 2023, so that would be a change that we would implement in 2024. And again, it's not an FTE, Your Worship, to do that. And the dog control officer, just to be clear, to remind people, does not work in Ward 2. Ward 2 has a contract with the SPCA. So this is strictly for Ward 1 now, and then when that contract expires, which I believe is in the end of 24, but I'm not certain. Yeah, it is the end of 24. Then in 25, then will animal control officer, dog control officer be patrolling out in Ward 2.
Thank you, John. I had a couple of questions, oh, sorry.
So, with the SPCA being responsible for Ward 2, this bylaw would cover Ward 2, would it not?
Yeah, that's the intent, so everybody has the same bylaws. So the SPCA would have to be informed.
So, so if there was an issue in Ward 2 with a barking dog, let's just say, then you call the SPCA?
Yes,
Maybe there's an issue of neglect or maybe something else,
it's
or
the SPCA, that's right.
SPCA,
Whoever they call now is who they would call until December 31st, 2024.
okay.
Unless council says, well, we want the SPCA to continue on over two.
So good to clear that up for the people at home that are listening, because I was not aware that that was actually the SPCA's issue. I thought that it was also the kind of dog control officers.
No, she
Yeah.
lives out there,
Area.
but she's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good to
So,
know.
yeah, and once we get something that council kind of wants, then I'll also be sending it to the SPCA to get their feedback as well. You know, that's what I did in Battleford to ensure that we have compliance.
There's, you should move on and pass it, I think, or try to, but move along still, but majority, as you said.
It's just, you know, council would just do a first reading, your worship. Again, as I've been saying from the beginning, the first and the third reading don't necessarily look the same.
That's great. So do we have any other questions or comments? So we're comfortable moving on to the first reading and incorporating, okay, that's great. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. So we'll leave it at first reading, not do second?
You can do second if you want, but I think council would like to see iterations of this, that's my agree with the.
Yeah, no, that's my understanding as well, so. Is that, we have consensus on it?
Right.
Thank you, council, thank you, John, I know that it's a big lift taking a bylaw that looks like this and turning it into something that looks completely different, so I appreciate that. Item 10C, respecting civic numbering bylaw. First reading by summary. The purpose of the civic numbering bylaw is to identify how civic numbering is determined and to ensure all civic numbers are clearly visible from the principal roadway for emergency services. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. John, bylaw, please.
Yes, your worship. This is one of the ones for public safety. It clearly allows the fire department to identify a home that needs a response, and this information is tracked by the development officer, and there's no fundamental changes to this. There's no fundamental changes to this bylaw, so it's really just about compliance.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments on the?
Do we need the blue sign, or do we have our own signs up for our civic address, like white, it has to be blue, or the town, as long as it's identified properly, visible, okay?
But I believe the blue signs are available from the fire department for greater visibility for 911 services. And Chief, is there a cost for that?
There is, depends on the number of digits, but I think the most expensive one is $15 or $16.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Second reading by title. Bylaw number PD-002, respecting civic numbering. I have a motion. Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Thank you, Councillor Malcolm the second. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you, council. Item 10D, respecting curfew bylaw. First reading by summary. A bylaw to establish a curfew for minors in the town of Grand Bay-Westfield. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. John, could you speak to the bylaw, please?
Your worship, the sergeant spoke to this, that this is a tool to deal with youth up to mischief, and without going a criminal process or anything like that. Again, not all municipalities have a curfew. As mayor, we repealed the curfew bylaw. As a CAO, and I do see the value in having it as a just in case type of bylaw. So the curfew is set for 10 o'clock, that was unchanged. And again, the parents would be paying a fine. And embarrassment of the RCP bringing their child home potentially. So.
Thank you, John. We have any questions or comments on the motion? Deputy Mayor Toole?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this one. I was pleased to hear the RCMP kind of give their explanation of it, but in my mind, this just says you can't be out after 10. I have one who's now 16, but last year at 15. If this had been enforced, I'd be broke. Like that's, but they weren't up to mischief. It was at a friend's house walking home. And so I know it's one of those things where it's not intended, like it's not going to be used maybe unless they're up to mischief, but we have criminal code things. If you have a kid who's doing something that's on the criminal code, use that. I think curfew maybe says it's a little less, but I think if you're fine and you're safe, your parents know where you are, you're following the rules, you're walking home from your friend's house at 11, if this is in place, you're technically in breach of the curfew bylaw. If you're out throwing rocks at somebody's house at 11 at night, you should be brought home by the RCMP for that, not for breaching curfew. So I'm happy that he gave his perspective, and I thoroughly respect that. But I really don't like this, and I'd rather see the people who are doing criminal code offenses be brought home for criminal code rather than just the fact that they're under 16. But that's just my, again, 2 cents, sorry.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Councillor,
If they're out after 10 o'clock at night, or they're up to no good sometimes they are,
But that's so
sometimes
sometimes then they can be brought home because of the no good they're up to, not the mere fact that it's after 10 o'clock.
any other questions or comments from
No, I
council?
completely agree with Deputy Mayor Toole.
Any other questions or comments on this bylaw?
I would just like to
Councilor
also
Burke.
comment, to Deputy Mayor Toole's point. I know up in Ward 2, I see kids walking all the time. I know they're not 16, otherwise they'd be driving. But they're just hanging out. It's dark, and they're just they're not causing any trouble. And I don't know, I think that might generate a whole opening can of worms. And I also agree, once they start doing things wrong, once they start throwing rocks or eggs or whatever it is they're doing wrong, then that's a different issue. So it's kind of a rules are great, but I don't know how we're always gonna be able to enforce those when they're just hanging out, sitting at the picnic table, up at the Four Corners, and they're just hanging out, they're just being together.
Thank you, Councillor. So what I think I'm hearing, John, is that council is looking at repealing the bylaw.
So defeat the first reading and then do first and second reading where council would that defeat the first reading and then say that we'll bring to council a new bylaw that repeals the former curfew bylaw.
Right. Am I hearing, I just wanna make sure that I'm hearing what I think I'm hearing? Yes. Yeah, no, I just wanna make sure. Okay, so we have a motion on the table, a bylaw to establish a curfew for minors in the town of Grand Bay-Westfield. We have a first and second on that. All in favor?
So, in favor.
Contrary minded? So the motion is defeated. And we need a motion to direct you to bring a second bylaw.
Not just directed.
So we'll just direct staff to bring a bylaw to repeal the curfew for minors bylaw in the town of Grand Bay-Westfield. Thank you, council. Okay, we'll move on to 10E, respecting exhibition bylaw. First reading by summary. A bylaw regarding exhibition operation guidelines and permit procedure for operating respective exhibitions. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. John, can you speak to the motion, please?
Again, this is a bylaw that we're bringing forward from the past. And this is really about larger events. So it could be somebody bringing a circus to town, could be a big concert promotion, but also just an example, I knew of a place where the owner of the property was a professor of fine arts and sculpted. And his yard ended up becoming a distraction because people would stop to get out, causing a hazard. So when you talk about some of the things that public event may be, like a natural artificial curiosity, it was a curiosity to look at this gentleman's art. It was wonderful stuff, don't get me wrong. But also, you know, concerts we do, circus, other shows or exhibitions for higher profit. So it's just a broad thing that we're trying to cover. You know, we can't be inclusive of everything. The other thing here is we do have 60 days, and really that's more for if there's an event holder. You know, they may need to do a large lead time for advertising, they may need to get electrical permits, and they don't want to find out just days within the event that they're not eligible for a license, or they won't be approved for a license or something like that. So it's for their safety as well. We are able to turn things around quicker if they don't need to do some of that stuff. You know, council can amend the bylaw if they would like a tighter turnaround to say that, you know, at the CAO's discretion, the 60 days can be waived. But again, if they're putting in advertising for a concert or a circus, they usually do that with lots of lead time. And they want to know that they're going to have a license to be able to hold their event.
Thank you, John. Do you have any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor McIntosh Lawrence and then Deputy Mayor Toole.
I did have a question in mind was regarding the 60 days. And, I think I would be more comfortable if we could put wording in that we could do a tighter turnaround if need be. Just in case something ever came up.
Do you have a follow-up or Deputy Mayor Toole?
I like this one, so I'm not an naysayer on this, but it's my only issue that the definition of public event, I think, is a tough, I know that's a super tough one to get, but I don't know, I don't wanna catch too much, but I don't want to, like, I think it's also so people know what they get it, that's where the way it is here, any exhibition of natural or artificial curiosity, theoretically, that could be somebody's Halloween decorations in their yard, so.
Christmas lights.
Yeah, so it's, I'm like, I don't know how we can deal with this public event definition to make it better for the public so people know what they're.
I guess my comment, Deputy Mayor, going back to other bylaws, there's a discernment in enforcement. You know, if somebody has a lovely yard, wonderful sculptures, the odd person standing that goes by it, that's fine. You know, a circus or somebody's putting on a special front in the front yard that is really disruptive, that's another thing as well. So I think, you know, it depends on community discernment and how we apply it as well. I agree that I wish we could find a perfect definition.
I don't know if we can, I guess you probably have looked around for them, but that's my only question with it is that definition, I just wanted to make sure that's, so people know what they need. You know, if they're not in breach of it because they're not sure if they should get a license or not, if it's just discretionary, we think you should be licensed for this one, but we don't care about this one.
Usually they're just temporary.
Pardon?
Usually they're just temporary.
Do we have any other questions or comments on the bylaw? Justin?
So just to clarify, the only amendment that I'm hearing is to put a clause in that allows a tighter turnaround. And we will try to see if we can tighten up the definition. That's what the only.
That's all I'm hearing. There being no further questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Second reading by title, bylaw number GG-011, respecting exhibition. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you, Council. Item 10F, respecting mobile home parks bylaw, first reading by summary. a bylaw respecting the operation and maintenance of mobile home parks within the town boundaries. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Thank you, Councillor Falcon. John, could you speak to the bylaw, please?
Again, Your Worship, this is one that's been slightly updated and carried forward. Affordable housing is an issue throughout New Brunswick. Mobile home parks are traditionally a means of having affordable accommodations for families. And so we're trying to include that. The one deficit in this one is talking about tiny homes. And that's something that perhaps we can address in council.
Thank you, John. Any questions or comments from council? I do have a couple of questions. Council's basically addressed every single question I've had so far during these plans. Get to ask one now. So, I just wanted to address that the wording where it says not less than 20 mobile homes, to make sure that if there's no specific rationale for that we can open that up so someone could have less than 20.
Yeah, I think that it comes from the old Municipalities Act that required 20. However, I'm going to turn it over to the development officer to speak to that better than I can.
The Municipalities Act requires size of the park, minimum size and number of sites. There's no reason why it couldn't be more flexible than that. Also, it's be economically viable as well to operate it.
Right, yes, but that would be the responsibility of the operator. So if they could make it viable, it would be nice if we made it as flexible as possible for anybody that wants to do that. And again, my other question had to do with the tiny homes, so if we were able to include some language surrounding those, I think that would be good municipal policy, as Jennifer said earlier in our meeting.
I think the way, I'm going to defer to David on this after I comment. I think the legislation allows for 2 homes. Like, is there a number that the mayor is thinking of that we should have as a minimum threshold?
I guess what is the rationale for a minimum threshold? Do we need one?
Well, at the end of the day, they're responsible for water and wastewater.
Right, that's true.
And that's an economic factor.
Right.
So.
But that wouldn't be our
So
responsibility.
And it talks about the private lanes to access their individual sites as well. Just set some standards for them to have their own privacy, their own use of the space that you would on the street. But it is a private company that sort of leads the site. It's managed by the.
Right. So, I guess my point is, I don't want to. It would be up to the private company to determine whether it's financially viable or not. That would not be our role.
So you want us to, we can go with the provincial minimum.
I would go.
And then they determine their own number for viability.
Yeah, I would be more comfortable with that.
Your Worship, my only concern, if we make it smaller size, usually what happens when you look at pricing of homes, the larger the home, the larger the property, the more expensive it is. If I'm concerned that if we increase or allow more lot size, a larger lot size, the number of them, it may push it out of affordability. There are mobile homes that are really quite nice. You can get double wides, things like that. So that would be my caution. The unintended consequence of pushing it out of affordability.
So there is a rationale to maybe having more than just.
I'm not saying there's a rationale. I'm just concerned about an unintended consequence. That's all. But we can do that, and we can see what happens, and then we can potentially make changes down the road that would affect a different property.
Any questions or comments on that particular potential amendment to council?
I was trying to think, so it looks like it's to a side, mobile home park shall have a minimum area of 3 hectares and designed to accommodate not less than 20. So it has to be, it's a size designed for not less than 20. It doesn't say it doesn't have to have the 20, but it has to have size. for 20, that's how it is, so they're just reducing the size, I don't know if that would necessarily reduce the end. You could make that half, you have to have rooms for 10, I don't know, I agree, I think it's,
Yeah.
the private business can determine, but then I don't wanna have that unintended, where it's an acre lot per acre.
Yeah, for one.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it has to be economically
Yes.
viable, and that's not our decision.
No, we can license anything as long as they want to.
But we had a discussion about housing affordability.
Yeah.
That's all.
So what's the difference, we're trying to do is in the Chris Pam just on the highway, they have the trailer, or mobile home park there, what's the difference? We're allowed to have 2, 4, 50, 60,
I think
100?
that particular clause that I question says that you can have one, but you can't have less than 20 mobile homes.
Well, the size for less than 20, isn't it?
Well, which is it? Is it sized for less than 20 or is it?
acres and about 20 sites.
So, yeah, so it's, yeah, it doesn't have to have 20, but it has to be big enough to have 20.
So it is, because then I have an unclear understanding of that particular clause.
Yeah.
The lot size. What's the lot size then? What's the minimum lot size for a mobile home then?
No dimensions.
It's like 7 meters by
90
10
meters.
meters.
Same like Chris Pam on the highway, they have a certain, I mean, they're on their own wells, are they, or is that they also, or?
It's most likely a common well and a common
Yes.
sewage system.
So that's
deciding
having
how big.
more density that way, right? 'Cause-
And that's where the economies of scale come in.
Yeah.
Which is not our decision.
Right, that's right, yeah, because I don't wanna, so I guess maybe we can come back and have, because now I'm unclear on whether our bylaw says you have to have 20 actual units.
Right.
Or if it's sized for 20 units.
So now, an unintended consequence may be, that if we go with minimum size, say 70 square meters, and somebody has a lot, on Nericus Road, and they have, a lot that's say 210 square meters, how will the neighbors feel if there's 3 mobile homes placed in this sort of residential area? I think that,
It would have to come forward as a bylaw and
And
then
you
it's
license.
like about 7 square.
yeah,
Mobile home park is.
but what you're suggesting that that would be allowed to do that?
Because of the lot size.
Yeah, or if you just added 2.
But then again, is that a bigger conversation to be had about, increasing the availability of affordable housing for people or is it the town, so.
The zoning bylaw already deals with the secondary suite and the granny suite, and we've added the mobile home as being that, so we've already got 1 mobile home on the residential lot now. So it's not like you're precluding that.
We find that to be-
Okay,
Send it, please do the first reading.
okay.
Yes.
We'll send it to Jennifer, bring it back for a second reading, see if we kind of hit some check off some boxes.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure that we're not throwing barriers in the way of providing affordable housing for people that need it. So so we'll do that my next question was about the tiny homes.
And we'll refer that.
Refer that back.
Jennifer, okay.
Does council have any more questions or comments on the bylaw as it is now? And if there are no further questions or comments, all in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you, council. Second reading by title, bylaw number PD-007, respecting mobile home parks. Do I have a motion? Thank you, councillor Bailmans. Do I have a second? Thank you, councillor Balcom. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Item 10G, respecting noise bylaw. First reading by summary. A bylaw to establish regular hours of noise enforcement. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. John, can you speak to the bylaw, please?
Yeah, so currently the noise bylaw is difficult to enforce, primarily because it's at an early time of around 8 o'clock, and I'm having trouble finding it here. There we go. So we've made some changes here, Your Worship. Fundamentally, the bylaw somewhat stays the same. We've expanded it to include firecrackers, firecrackers, ATVs, I think, snow machines. Now, I'd just like to bring council's attention that there's different types of whistling. And there's klaxons. Some people can be really quite loud and rude with their whistles. And again, one-offs are one thing, but something that's ongoing is really where the nuisance is. So whistling isn't just the person, not me, whistling down the street. This is about disturbing whistles. It could be someone, even a little kid, found his dad's referee whistle and is running around all day blowing the whistle and driving Grandma Smith mad. So yeah, these are generally things that disturb the peace. And the time has been changed to 11 o'clock from 8.
Thank you, John. Any questions or comments on the bylaw? Councillor Balcom?
Thank you, Your Worship. I fully agree that the current bylaw of 8 o'clock is much too early for today's activities, the way of life of people today. But I personally have a problem with pneumatic hammers, construction equipment, and machinery being allowed until 11 o'clock at night.
It's too late.
That I think, and also with fireworks. And regarding fireworks, I may be in the minority here, but last summer, almost every Friday and Saturday night, my dog went ballistic because of unplanned, different times, different duration fireworks. And I'm wondering if this may be an opportunity for us to actually add a clause in this noise bylaw to actually permit fireworks on specified days, such that people can plan around it. 2 days that come in particular are New Year's Eve, and the second would be Canada Day. And people who have dogs or who have PTSD or whatever would know well in advance with our communications person can help get that message out, and it would clear up that a little bit. The people who would be dissatisfied with that would be those who regularly use the fireworks, but there's always two sides to every story. So a couple of issues, one regarding fireworks, and the other, I believe, again, pneumatic hammers, construction equipment, and machinery being allowed until 11 o'clock at night is too late.
Thank you, Councillor Balcom. Deputy Mayor Toole?
Just a quick one on this one. I like pushing the time back from 8 to 11. I never thought about the machinery issue till you mentioned it, but I'm thinking this would make it easier to enforce, and I think a lot of people, whether they don't know about the bylaw being here or who to call, because I asked the sergeant when he was here, and he said yes, they need to call the RCMP on it, so they need to know this, and so they have the stats on it, because other than the dog group I mentioned earlier, the second most complaint I get is ATVs going really late at night, and the revving and backfiring, so that people don't know who to call about it. So that's, if it's after this time, just maybe some communications out there when this passed to let people know where to call and who to call. But yeah, I never thought about the machinery, whether there's some tiered level you can put in here for that type of stuff.
That's a possibility.
So Your Worship, I'd like to ask the next commissioner, he deals with a lot of construction, paving equipment, pneumatic drills, breaking up concrete. If he has any comments about what would be a good time if council so chooses to limit constructive use of pneumatic equipment.
Most of the equipment that would be going around would be contractors, not a personal person on their own, would be contractors. They're normally winding up around 8. Again, if they're doing summer jobs or whatever, they usually work as long as they can. But again, they have to go to work the following day as well too. So 8's a good time.
Do we have any other questions or comments on the bylaw? Councillor McIntosh Lawrence?
I like the idea of allowing fireworks on certain special days, like New Year's, Canada Day, maybe New Brunswick Day. I think that's, if we could put a clause in or something.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? So I think what I'm hearing so far, and it seems like there's, I see nodding around the table, but I'll lay it out so I can make sure I have full understanding. So we need to add a clause to permit fireworks on certain days.
Just for clarity, I've heard general agreement for New Year's Eve, not New Year's Day, and Canada Day. I've seen heads nod there. I haven't seen a lot of head nod for New Brunswick Day. So could we just have a determination of whether or not that should be included from all of council?
There's more, I think this would be an education one as well, I think this might be a tough, there's a lot of people who do fireworks a lot, so making sure that people are aware and know, and I think giving more days, if we're limiting it, I think putting a few more in is better than.
Can we be specific with dates then, please? Just for us, so that we can write what you
Like
want.
special event holidays, sorry.
Well, we have just time of day is best, maybe just certain hour, because my dog, he doesn't move a bit, here fireworks, he doesn't move at all, so it's pretty chilled out, but just across the river, you hear them going 24/7 sometimes all across the river, so it's not that far away, the bang and boom and just across, so how's it any different in our own neighborhood really? I don't like to see it in the morning, but late at night, we want to celebrate.
Councillor Burke.
I think specific to your question though, regarding dates, I agree with the special event dates, you know, but I think, you could include a couple more.
Tell me what they are.
New Brunswick Day, Canada Day,
Labor Day.
Labor Day, New Year's Eve,
New Year's Eve.
the special event, holiday dates are
Victoria
typically
weekend.
when people celebrate.
Victoria Day, yeah.
People do like them, I know a lot of people do them for, and depending on if Canada Day falls at a different time, it's not on a Saturday, some people will do the Saturday around it, like I know people do different things depending on when they have family parties, so just making sure.
How do you police it though, if they do set them off, or how do you go about
It's
it?
the RCMP.
It's the same as the ATVs at night, it's the
They pop them off and you really don't know who they are, it's just go in the dark thing again, so.
Okay, so what I've heard, not in chronological order, New Year's Eve, Canada Day, MB Day, Labor Day, we talked about Victoria weekend, but is it all weekend or is there a specific day?
Specific day.
Specific day, Victoria Day.
Pick a day, oh, Victoria Day, okay, so that's 5.
Councillor Dawson.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, that clarifies, since people have to know in order for this to work and for the RCMP to be able to know what they're to enforce and all that, and it's just a particular day and not that long, the entire long weekend. I think that's a good compromise.
And is there a way to have something, and I'm just thinking of what I've seen, again, there are a lot around my area too, for somebody to have to request, and then there's a publication, like if somebody wants to have a community event, can they ask permission and then it's on the town page, something like that, would that satisfy? Thinking about the balancing of needs that you mentioned, because I really hate limiting fun, but I do know exactly what you mean, I have a dog that will lose their their marbles, but
Are you taking as an example, someone was having a family wedding in their backyard?
bingo, and they wanna make sure, just because if the concern is that we need to know and be prepared, and we don't, then having some way for people to have their fun, but just make sure there's a way that others know.
So a mechanism by which people can apply.
So we can go through the development officer, potentially to have them apply for firecracker license.
I don't really, not a cost or anything to it, it's just more, it's a form of publication, just so people are aware. I think that seems to be the concern that Councillor.
So if we're just asking people to notify people, then we shouldn't have a bylaw.
That's right.
That includes
Yeah.
There we go.
But no, but if it's broader notification, then it's on the town site, if the town needs to police this, and I think if we need some sort of balance, either we let people only do it 5 days a year, or we agree that there's a need for people to have family events or weddings, then if there's a mechanism we can use the town, and they can apply through the bylaw, and we can publish it on the town site or something. I'm trying to think of options, I haven't looked at it because it's just the first I've heard of it is right now, so we really haven't had a chance to look about.
Councillor Mac.
I agree, and I can see what you're saying, but in theory, that could mean that there could be fireworks every day.
Yeah.
So then there's no need for bylaw.
Yeah, and so I'm just, that's hard to, cause I wanna balance, but I don't know what that balance would be, because,
Your worship, I was gonna suggest the 6th day, maybe St. Patrick's Day or something, because we're going from New Year's to May, 5 months. So maybe break it up in between in March.
that's never,
Because
it's not
then
really
we go
fireworks
July,
anymore.
August, September.
It's mostly the issue is May, June, July, August.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of fireworks going on in March.
It costs a lot of money also, so people aren't gonna blow them off just for something to do, they cost money.
We tend to
Yeah,
see a
yeah.
lot of complaints about people shooting off fireworks.
Yes, yeah, it would be definitely one of the main complaints that I hear.
Is there, instead of choosing days now, is there a way to ask, come back and see if there's other towns that have done this, if there's a mechanism out there, like I say making a
Most communities ban
ban,
zilch.
I say good luck.
Sorry?
I say good luck to everybody on this firework thing, cause they're gonna blow them up regardless, no matter what the bylaws are, so.
And that's an enforcement issue for our CMP, but it is definitely an identified issue within the town, and it, it bothers babies that are sleeping and people that, that have combat experience, and it can have PTSD, it can be very distressing for them. So at least knowing days when to expect them, then I think that's being neighborly. But, so I'm hearing add a clause to permit fireworks on certain days, and John, you have that.
New Year's Eve, Canada Day, MB Day, Labor Day, Victoria Day.
And then, the other thing that I heard was that, we're only permitting the machinery, such as the pneumatic hammers until 8 p.m.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Am I getting that correctly? That's great. Have I captured council's wishes? Okay. So, you're clear?
Yeah.
On what we need to do?
Yeah.
Then we will, if there are no other, questions or comments, we'll move to the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, council. Do we just leave second reading until you do those amendments, John?
Sorry, Cindy.
Should we hold off on second reading until we?
No, this is fairly straightforward.
Okay, all right,
The amendments are pretty clear, so I think we do second reading.
all right. Second reading by title, bylaw number GG-010, respecting noise. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole, and Councillor Burke, did I see you second? Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you, council. Item 10H, respecting peddlers or transient traders, first reading by summary. The purpose of this bylaw is to outline licensing and procedural guidelines for peddlers or transient traders. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Do I have a second? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. John, can you speak to the bylaw, please?
Yeah, we talked briefly about modernizing language and stuff like this, and I know this is a one that, peddlers has a negative connotation. Transient traders doesn't sound a whole lot better, maybe we need temporary businesses or something like that, so we'll definitely consider that, Your Worship. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is be business friendly, and so some of the changes have been placed in have been made that, can we attract food trucks here? We tried pizza food truck last year, I think it was. And they weren't sure if it worked or not, with the space work and stuff like that. So it came to council and council waived their desire for that. So we're doing for something same, except it would be the CAO discretion. And of course, that would be in conjunction with David, or it could be with the recreation program coordinator or something like that. So we're trying to build some flexibility in to attract more amenities here. I guess that's about the major change that's been made. Again, the whole thing hasn't been overhauled. We have a limited legal budget.
Thank you, John. Do you have any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor McIntosh Lawrence?
I have just a quick question about language. It says maximum of 6 weeks for a license. Is there a reason why You could, it's only, for 6 weeks?
If it's a trial period, pilot project.
So they can only get a license for 6 weeks, max?
No, this is, which section are you referring to?
4.2.
4.2.
John, that's
So
same
the way,
section.
okay, so that, sorry, I thought you were thinking about 4.3. 4.2, issuance of a license allows a temporary business to operate at one location within Parliament municipality for a maximum of 6 weeks. Yeah, so it's just, you know, they may wanna come in and set up just for a short term.
But what if they wanna set up for longer? Like summer is 8, 10 weeks.
Sorry, David?
That would fall under 4.3.
Yeah.
John, this is the same question I had earlier.
Anybody.
Okay.
CAO.
Yeah, we can, sorry.
Sorry, because I had asked you, because it says that, does that mean they can move around the municipality? They set up 6 weeks at Greenwich Point and then they, you know, they have.
To the fees, so flat $150. But temporary is just that, it's not, generally a business that operates for a year is established in either someone's home, where they don't need a business license or anything like that. This is just someone who's typically coming for town. We already waive it for the farmer's market. You know, if they're gonna be here for the whole year and they wanna change locations, then they should you know, be setting up one permit. But again, this is trying to allow someone like a food truck to come here on a temporary basis, see if it works. I still haven't answered your question.
A food truck by its very nature is transient.
Yes,
They won't be setting up a brick and mortar business.
no, but they're coming in and do they, you know, and the Health Act, right? Yes, the Health Act. So there are things that they have to do that check off. But again, it's just temporary. I'm trying to think of something right. I can't
Well,
think of an example off the top.
here's an example, I have a food truck and I wanna come to Bay-Westfield. I buy my $150 license, I wanna come to Bay-Westfield and I wanna set up at, you know, Greenwich Point for a week and then I wanna go to St. Andrews and I wanna come back and set up at Greenwich Point 2 weeks from now. So this is where I'm being confused about the 6-week clause.
Again, then we go to the next clause, 4.3, where it'd be more than 6 weeks at the discretion of the CEO.
You can extend it.
Okay, that's what I wanna be clear, but it's $150 for the year.
For sorry, Pizza Delight is not a temporary business. Neither is Schulman's. A food truck may not be here Sunday through Monday, or Sunday through Saturday.
Right.
They're temporary. They come every Thursday, say they come in, they talk to the development officer and say, we wanna come every Thursday. That's a temporary business. 4.3, which is new, now says, yes, we can allow them to come 52 times
Okay.
for the year.
As long as we have that flexibility.
We did it before we have it now.
So our food truck, just for the quality of life for the residents, things of that nature, and you know, they're not paying $150 every 6 weeks.
No, they would have before. Actually, today they do. Hopefully, at the end of the third reading, they won't.
It was 6 months. It was 6 weeks, and CAO could extend that to 6 months.
Yeah.
You're making it a little bit more of a risk.
Yeah, we're trying to.
Thank you. Councilor McIntosh Lawrence and then Councilor Bellman.
Is there language that says like, if, say the community vitality committee wanted to put on an event and food truck came once?
Yeah, I think 4.3 would cover that. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is build a stronger, more dynamic community. And I think that this language allows us to do that. If, you know, there are more restrictions before.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Councilor Bellman.
Do you sit by a washroom facility or a business that has a washroom, or they don't need that, food truck?
No, they don't need to. Usually, you know, they have to, it's about their cooking facilities, that they have to have a certificate from health. That's about it. Usually there's garbage cans and things like that.
Like, I noticed a while back, and the person tried to set up in Grand Bay, and they said had a washroom, and they said couldn't set up in Grand Bay, so I'm just a little curious about that.
Are you familiar with what the health plan has to say about this?
Depends if they're prepared food, the ice cream stuff, only use water, there's different licenses.
It's a food truck, right, so.
Yeah, like the flavors now does fish and chips, they don't have a washroom.
Well,
They do. Where?
They had it, and they brought it to food prep.
Oh, I had not seen that.
That's true.
Is it for staff or the public?
Any other further questions or comments? There being none, all in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you, council. Second reading by title, bylaw number PD-004, respecting peddlers and transient traders. Do I have a motion? Great, Councillor Bellmans, and a second by Deputy Mayor Toole. Great, thank you. Any questions or comments on the motion? There be,
Just for clarification, your worship, sorry. Per the deputy mayor's remarks towards the beginning of the session, do we want to try and change the name to temporary businesses?
Temporary business is in there, that the transient trader is somebody who operates a temporary business, it just seems very.
Well, I'm asking, do you want me to change the title?
I think it would be more modern,
Okay.
yes.
Okay,
Is that the will of council? Any other clarifications required?
no, I think that's your worship. Sorry to be,
It's okay, clarity is our friend,
Yes.
not always,
well.
not in the design process, so.
So, all in favor?
I,
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you, council. 10I, respecting planning advisory committee bylaw, first reading by summary. A bylaw to establish a planning advisory committee. We have a motion? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Balcom. John, please speak to the bylaw, please.
Yeah, the previous version just limited the number of members. Now we're just saying, this is what the province allows. Council will actually make this decision through the budget process. How many PAC members do we want to pay? So this allows just greater flexibility for council to feel that the certain amount.
Thank you, John. Any, Councillor Balcom and then Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, your worship. Would this be a proper place to add some more detail as we're amending the PAC bylaw to maybe specify that there has to be a minimum of one member of PAC from each of the wards? Because right now we don't have any representation from Ward 2. And
Right, Councillor.
yeah, I just think it would be, I'm not going to suggest that we have to have 2 and 3 or 3 and 4 or equal numbers, but a minimum of one from each of the wards such that there is representation. And based on my year and a half on PAC, our diversity is what gives us the greatest strength, and in particular our respective diverse backgrounds. Some are HR specialists, some have other specialties that help us make an overall informed decision and recommendation to council. So I think having somebody from Ward 2 would benefit, because they will be able to bring that perspective to the table.
Okay, thank you very much.
well, that's the question, how many you have right now, PAC members, how many on right now?
Sorry.
How many people do we have on PAC right now? 6?
So I think we can accomplish that without amending the bylaw, councillor. Council, we can bring a resolution to council next week. Allocating money to onboard, train, and recruit a new PAC member from Ward 2.
Councillor
I think he makes an excellent point.
Yeah, does that
Yeah, absolutely.
satisfy your?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Is there anybody up for a renewal like, and after terms up sooner or no?
I don't know, the terms are staggered
Oh, that's right, yeah.
to prevent everybody from finishing their term at the same time.
Right.
That's,
It's
do you know,
It's to be as close as you can depending on your numbers, so that 1/3 of the committee is turned over each term.
Sorry, I'm gonna defer to David, your worship, if I'm wrong. My recommendation to council would be let's put someone from Ward two on there sooner than later. We've only budgeted for 7. I think Ward 2 would have a stronger voice if there were 7 members on PAC, not 8. And then this person, once we do the changeover in PAC for recruitment, we recruit one less person this time, so that it's Ward 2 is 1 of 7 instead of 1 of 8. David, you have any comments?
At the moment, at the end of the term, and this has been an ongoing issue with different councils, but rather than removing a member, when the term comes to the end, they're generally asked if they wish to continue, but when there's somebody that needs a replacement, it comes to council anyway, and they can choose to recruit whoever they want to recruit.
So that's a good tool. Well, let's do Ward 2 sooner than later, and then we come to the ending of the term, so.
Well, tackle that,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think, and again, Councillor Balcom, thank you for bringing that up. I think that's a very valuable point that you brought to our attention. Do you have any other questions or comments on the bylaw? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Second reading by title, bylaw number PD-003, respecting planning advisory committee. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Bellmans. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Item 10J, respecting plastic bag reduction bylaw, first reading by summary. A bylaw regarding use and restrictions of plastic bags in retail operations. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Balcom. John?
Your worship, this one was adopted shortly after I arrived, and this bylaw is common to all municipalities, Fundy Regional Service Commission. It's very much like the accommodation levy, everybody adopts pretty much the same one. The fines were not set by us, penalties were not set by us, it was set by the Fundy Regional Service Commission. This, your worship, is more of a compliance issue than anything else.
Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Second reading by title, bylaw number GG-009, respecting plastic bag reduction. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. I have a second. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. 10K, respecting Sunday shopping bylaw, first reading by summary. The purpose of this bylaw is to repeal the former Sunday shopping bylaw. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. John, can you speak to the bylaw, please?
Yes, your worship, in my preamble, I alluded to the fact that historically bylaws are a response to issues or items of concern to the community. Sunday shopping used to be an issue. It really doesn't seem to be that anymore, so we're recommending that this be repealed. Fundamentally, if the market determines that a store is successful on Sunday, then people want Sunday shopping. If the market determines that Sunday shopping is successful, then they want. You know, it's the market. If it's profitable to open, then it's because the people want the business. We should let the market determine that.
Thank you, John. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. A second reading by title, bylaw number PD-005, respecting Sunday shopping. I have a motion. Thank you, Councillor Burpee. I have a second. Councillor McIntosh Lawrence, thank you. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Right.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, council. That was a pile of bylaws and some incredibly fulsome discussion on all of them. And one second. I just wanted to talk about, before we move on, the bylaw that we were supposed to have on the table a couple of weeks ago, the ATV bylaw. And I just wanted to explain to anyone watching why it hasn't come back yet. That bylaw has been taken to the province by the leadership at Quad NB, and we're waiting for them to return it back to us for third reading. So anybody that's waiting on that bylaw, our hands are tied until we get that back from Quad NB in the province. John?
Your worship, just a procedural item. According to the procedural bylaw, council meetings are end at 9:30. It's now 9:18. I'm not optimistic that we can get through new business and bills for payment and consent agenda by 9:30. My recommendation to council, and it has to be unanimous, your worship. David, can you check the procedural bylaw? Is it unanimous or 2/3? That we have a motion that extends the deadline for the end of the council meeting from 9:30 to say 10 o'clock, which would be, I think, ample time. But I would encourage council before we move into new business and recommendations that we make a determination if we want to proceed past that.
Right. I was watching the clock. I was expecting the note about the curfew. So, is it 2/3 or unanimous? This is.
I don't have it, it's unanimous. Not here.
And while we're trying to figure out whether it's 2/3 or a unanimous vote to disregard curfew for tonight and move on to 10 o'clock, I just wanted to also, I just thank council for all of their work on the bylaws, but I want to thank our leadership team and all of our staff as well. It's a lot of work going through the bylaws, changing all of the, the outdated language, removing gendered references, making sure everything is relevant and fair and is.
2/3.
It's 2/3? Okay, all right, but let me finish my thank you to you and the leadership team, jeepers. But thank you very much. I know it's a lot of work and I appreciate all the work you do. So do I have a motion to extend our council meeting to 10 o'clock this evening?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Bailman. Do I have a second? Councillor Balkin, thank you. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried unanimously. I guess we're good to move into new business. Thank you, everybody. 11A, year-end 2022 strategic report. And John?
Thank you, your worship. My apologies to council, it's taken us a while to get this out. Originally, I wanted to time it with the audit, but the audit will be next time, and I just want to get it out here, just to wrap the year up in post. So I regret that it's 185 pages for council. It reflects the activity of most of your leadership team. We should note that the information from the CFO and the communications manager is not here, even though they've been assigned tasks. With some of the red is because they both have just started learning. I don't know if James has actually had his first training day yet. He's been neck deep in the audit, your worship. So this is just a comprehensive list of everything that we've been doing for trying to complete 2022. There are items on here that were started in 22 will be completed in 23. So yes, your worship, I don't know that I can highlight any singular thing on here, but it's a fairly comprehensive list of what we've been doing accomplishments and the challenges.
Thank you, John. Any questions for the CAO on the year-end strategic report? I just wanna say that I love the Cascade report. You know, this one was really big. I will admit I didn't read the whole thing, but it really gives me a good idea of where we are on our strategic priorities and our tactical plans. I really do appreciate it, so thank you. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file the 2022 year-end strategic report as presented.
So move.
Thank you, Councillor Balcom. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. Any questions or comments on the motion?
I would just like to comment that I really appreciated the accomplishments, the challenges, and what to do next. So it was simplified life for me, trying to navigate through all this information. So, yeah, well done on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burpee. If there are no further questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 11B, Fire Department Strategic Plan. John is,
Before I turn it over to the chief, your worship, I just want to compliment him, his officers and the firefighters for the outstanding work they do. You know, it's a pleasure to be able to work with them, and I'm looking forward to seeing them implement the strategic plan. So I'll just ask the chief if he has any comments to it.
Sure, thank you, Your Worship, members of council. So for the most part, the strategic plan is the smaller of the two documents that TSI has prepared for us. This one is more of a guideline of how we'll make our decisions and the items that we'll work towards, and it's broken down into 4 categories: working with our partners, which is basically collaboration, responding to calls for our operations, providing our people, so basically human resources, and then engaging in the community, whether it be through communications, surveys, those types of things. And we're very happy with what was presented, and we posted throughout the stations, and anytime we want to make a decision on an item, we can refer to the document to help with that.
thank you, chief. You know, just through the fire review process, and you know, I think I can speak for all of council that we've become more and more conversant with the professionalism in your organization. We're very proud to have Grand Bay-Westfield Fire and Rescue. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield approve the fire department strategic plan as presented. Do I have a motion? Well, there's everybody, one really. I think Councillor Burpee had her hand up first, and Councillor Bellman, did you second? Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on the motion?
Just I really liked it. It was a really good, clear document. It's great.
We're in good hands.
That's right. Any other further comments? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, council. 11C, Fire Department Review. Okay, John, I'll turn this over.
Again, your worship, I'm going to defer to the chief, but again, you know, you heard them present last meeting. We do have a very good fire department, and they really had to work hard to find recommendations. And I would refer to them less as recommendations and more as OFEs, you know. Oh, we can improve this. Oh, look, we can improve that. You know, this isn't, this is the best fire department that I've been able to work with, your worship. And I'll turn it over to the chief here with that.
Thank you very much. So this obviously is the much longer of the 2 documents, and it contains a number of, I believe 63 various recommendations, as the CEO was referring to. A lot of them are definitely areas for improvement, and there's a couple other areas that I wanted to highlight that will have an impact in the community. One will be the level of service that will be forthcoming following council's motion coming up. SOG reviews, our department does have a pretty extensive list of standard operating guidelines, which are in reasonable shape but due for review. And this report provided a lot of really valuable insight that will help us through that process and make sure that our policies, procedures, and guidelines are in really good condition. And another area to highlight is the station locations. There's no need to move fire stations or build fire stations, which from a financial point of view is very good. Our stations are located basically as they come in, they couldn't pick better places for our 2 fire stations, so that works out very well. There is some opportunity and some recommendations in over the next long term, budgeting for some renovations to kind of allow for some more room and for some more appropriate facilities, whether it be restrooms, decontamination areas, etc. And then the last item that we'll be working on through some recommendations of the report is our water supply capacity, which is not terrible, but it is at this point mostly residential, structural fire focused, which is the vast bulk of what we would deal with, but we do need to look a little bit more forward in the future for more commercial, basically a higher volume of water available for commercial fires.
Thank you, Chief. Do we have any questions or comments for the Chief before I read the motion? Again, the review is just evidence that that we have, you know, the best fire and rescue department, you know, for, you know, I think one of the comments in the report said this is a strong, healthy department, and we should be very proud of that. And I feel that the people in the town really feel that too. So it's not just council, it's the people in the town of Grand Bay-Westfield that really appreciate the high level of service that you and all of the volunteer firefighters provide to them. We feel very safe here, we thank you for that. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield approves the fire service review report of March 8, 2023 as presented by Transitional Solutions Inc. and direct the fire chief to develop a fire rescue department tactical plan guided by the recommendations provided in the report, and direct the fire chief to provide council 3 level of service options for consideration to be included in bylaw PS-002. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Bailmans. Do I have a second? Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Your Worship, I just want to comment.
Yes.
And this is more for the residents at home. The best way that council, any council, can control the cost of the fire department is by defining what the level of service is that they provide. And so when the chief talks about bringing 3, not to put words in his mouth, he's going to be looking at the most affordable option, which you require minimal training, minimal equipment, and then you have the most expensive option, which requires the most training and the most equipment, which by necessity is expensive, needs lots of money. And then there's the Goldilocks version, which is just right for us. So that's all I wanted to say, Your Worship, primarily for those who may be watching at home. This is where council, any council controls the cost, the expense of the fire department, because you do get fire departments out there who want the biggest, the best, and at the end of the day, it comes to the point where there's a lot of municipalities across Canada that do not have a sustainable fire department. And we do. We have a good chief who thinks about sustainability.
Thank you, John. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, council. Item 11D, Fire Department Monthly Report, January. And John?
Your Worship, since this council has been here, we've tweaked the type of reports, we've changed the type of reports that are brought to council. Council generally satisfied with the what we call cascade reports here, the year-end report that you see. However, council's also said, well, we'd like to know more about what's going on with the fire department. And so the previous one that was provided to council was very, it was a challenge to read, frankly, sometimes. So the chief has come up with something that he hopes has the relevant information that council wants. If it doesn't have the information that you want, please let us know. We're here to give you the information that you want, or if you think, I didn't need to know that, let us know that as well. As for the content of the report, I'll turn that over to the chief.
Sure. So this particular report for January in under new business is basically just to reintroduce the reports. Going forward, they'll be part of the consent agenda, which is the February report you'll see in there in this kit. So there's a few things that we cover, is just the emergency responses. So we've kind of, what the CEO was referring to before, there was a lot more data involved in that previously that really didn't have a lot of relevance at this level. So this is just kind of a quick breakdown of the actual experiences that we had, some of the training that took place, the shifts demonstrating the hours at the, and really all of these three categories, training shifts and ancillary activities, is just basically demonstrating the hours that the volunteers are committing to the department and the community. And then the final section is highlights, is just a few things throughout the month that have taken place, whether it be a special event or certain training milestones, or a unique situation that's taken place. It's just a format for us to keep council informed on what's happening.
Chief. We have any questions for the chief on the report? Councillor McIntosh Lawrence?
No questions, but just a comment that I really like this. It's clear and concise, and it gives us exactly what we want, especially the emergency responses and the highlights. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to say too that I think I might have been the one that asked this. I really like this because it gives us an idea of what's going on in our community. You know, and it also gives us the tools to tell the story of the fire and rescue department. You know, how many hours, how many calls, that kind of stuff, so that, you know, we can, you know, we all, like, we know here, you know, what goes on, but again, if we can help tell that story, this is a tool that helps us do that, so thank you.
Absolutely.
The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file the monthly report for January 2023. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Item F, intent to adopt municipal plan, section 25 presentation. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield establish March 27th, 2023 as the date of a public presentation concerning the proposed changes to the municipal plan bylaw to be held at 7:00 p.m. in the Grand Bay Room of the Community Centrum, 609 River Valley Drive. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. Do I have a second? Councillor Falcon, thank you. John, can you speak to the motion, please?
Yeah, before I turn it over to the development officer to say this is when we can hear from Jennifer Brown again. Is anything you want to add to that, Stephen?
No, it's sort of the first thing in the next steps that Jennifer presented in her slide presentations, a step in the municipal plan review and adoption phase of the Community Planning Act. It is a little bit more broad and sweeping than the public hearing where we'll actually have a bylaw document to respond to, but it does allow a 30-day comment period for people to again address anything that they hear or they didn't hear in that presentation.
Thank you, David. Do we have any questions or comments on the motion? I just want to take this moment to urge the members of the public and anybody that's watching that this municipal plan bylaw review is a huge opportunity for you to get involved in what your community is going to look like over the next 5 to 10 years. So please take the time, get involved, read the document when it becomes available, and we really do want to hear your comments. If there are no further questions or comments, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, council. Item 11G, Planning Advisory Committee recommendation. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield refer draft bylaw number PD-003 respecting Planning Advisory Committee to the Planning Advisory Committee for review and comment to council. John, can you speak to the motion, please?
This is straightforward, Your Worship. This is just referring the bylaw which the councillor spoke about the need for Ward 2 member to the PAC for their feedback. Is there, and I'll ask the development officer for that.
Just that unlike the other bylaws, this one is under the Community Planning Act, and it's the Community Planning Act that's requires council make that request, PAC to give the recommendation for council.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Berkey. Do I have a second? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, Council. Item 12, bills for payment. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield authorize the March 13th, 2023 bills for payment as presented in the amount for $280,249.55. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Bellman. Do I have a second? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor McIntosh Lawrence?
Just two. Number 58, the notice of hearing for $1,600.
Councillor, not all spending is within our control. The province mandates that, excuse me, we advertise to the community, excuse me. We have to advertise that we're gonna borrow money. And the paper that we have to do it through, because it's the only one, is the Post Media. So that's 2 advertisements for over $1,600. And
The other one, number 69, Service New Brunswick, bylaw registration. Do we have to register every bylaw?
$85 each time. Yeah. I assume this covers their costs, so that's revenue neutral.
That's it. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Bellman?
Number 67, parts, $4,443.52. Parts for what?
I'm gonna turn that over to the Works Commissioner, Councillor.
Yes, again, we have, I guess now 2 tracklesses, so we bought some shoes and parts and filters for those, so we bought them for the year,
Okay,
so that's why it's just a large figure.
makes sense, yeah. Okay, thank you.
So there would be a drop off in service as the machines and repairs that we.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. I just wanna speak to, you said that not all spending is, predicted or controllable or whatever. UMNB, which is Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick, has put together a pre-budget submission to the provincial government in advance of their budget work, and one of the asks is that they give us a hand financially with all of these unplanned expenses that are coming along with local governance reform and amalgamation, because it is expensive to redo all of your bylaws. It is expensive to redo your municipal plan bylaw and zoning bylaw. So that's some of the good work that UMNB is doing on behalf of the municipalities of New Brunswick.
Your Worship, I'm just gonna comment, I'm very concerned about our legal budget, and especially going through some of these bylaws. So, yeah, it would be great if the province could help us on that, and I think the CFO would be great too.
Yes, like I said, municipalities have worked in good faith to bring this over the finish line, and it's important, I think, that we're supported financially to do this work too. Deputy Mayor Toole?
The legal fees are one of the top ones. I was on the committee with UMNB putting together these types of requests, and that's one of the top concerns that municipalities have had, that's one of the big added costs. They're listed in those things like the advertisements and the registration, all this stuff. And it's, it adds up.
Thank you. So item 13, consent agenda. 13A, LGR 6, leadership in times of change. B, LGR 7, effective communications. C, LGR 7A, active communications. D, LGR 7B, assertiveness test. E, LGR 8, mandated services and regional collaboration. F, RVCC Board Meeting Minutes, September 20th, 2022. G, RVCC Board Meeting Minutes, October 18th, 2022. H, RVCC Board Meeting Minutes, November 15th, 2022. I, RVCC Board Meeting Minutes, January 17th, 2023. J, NB Police Association. K, Fire Department Monthly Report, February 2023. L, Compassionate Grief Center 2023 Celebration for a Cause. M, NB Medical Education Foundation, message from Executive Director. And consent agenda. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file the consent agenda items for March 13th, 2023. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Any questions or comments on the motion?
Your worship,
Yes.
there's 3 items, the Police Association, Compassionate Grief Center, and the Medical Education Foundation, which had asks, and historically we've not funded those requests.
Thank you, John. Any other questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Item 14, council report. We will start with Councillor Balcom tonight.
Thank you, Your Worship. 3 items. Just over a week ago, along with yourself, and I'm not sure if other councillors came or not, I had the pleasure of attending a wonderful hockey game. It was an outdoor hockey game, the first outdoor hockey game in Wellsford in 27 years, I think it is. And it was a wonderful hockey game, 3-on-3, between firefighters of our wonderful fire department and of the wonderful Wellsford Fire Department. And it was a really nice event. Everybody was having fun. And the part that I took away that I really enjoyed was seeing the camaraderie of the 2 fire departments. I know sometimes they train together, sometimes they help each other and work together at calls, but to see them enjoying themselves in the midst of the entire community and other members from Grand Bay-Westfield who were there watching was just a real pleasure. So I'm looking forward to attending next year's. I understand it's going to be an annual event, as long as the weather holds out on the date that is planned. Secondly, last week I had the pleasure also of, with all of council, yourself and all other members of council, I'm going to steal their thunder, so I'm sorry, of attending a tour of the R&D Innovation Lab, as well as the sawmill in Sussex. Now, I'll be very frank, I was wondering how I could justify taking a day off my work and taking a vacation day to go, as well as what benefit it would be for me as a councillor to attend on behalf of the town, touring a facility in Sussex. Well, I was pleasantly surprised and rewarded that in the Innovation Lab, seeing those seedlings in all different types of light and with the equipment that was manufactured at another R&D facility of a different company in New Brunswick, world-class R&D. It brought pleasure to me to know that we have a can-do attitude here, and it's, again, world-class. But I also came home knowing that it was a benefit to the community as well, because in our town's recreation master plan, it's been identified that there's a growth area and a need for more trails, walking trails, non-motorized trails. And we all know that JDI, the Woodlands Division, has a lot of woodlands around the province, including around Ward 2. So I'm hoping that the passion that we demonstrated in going to see JDI and hearing what their values are can be reflected when we do hopefully may have an opportunity to meet with JDI to show them our passion for additional trails that just might involve them as a partner. So it was not a waste of time. And finally, I'd like to talk about snow clearing. We had a storm back on Thursday evening into Friday morning, May the 2nd to May the 3rd. It was quite a bad storm. And I want to talk very specifically about the snow clearing of the sidewalk along our major road, which is called Route 177. In the old village of Westfield, it was where I live, it's called Neripus Road and still is, and in Grand Bay-Westfield, it's called River Valley Drive. I was unaware that the contractor that the town has hired does the Neripus Road side, and that the town does the River Valley Drive side. But specifically, two residents called me, and I had a look myself after the hockey game, and immediately called the acting CAO in the absence of our CAO, and I was pleasantly surprised and after the hockey game that he had an answer for me right away. It was an equipment breakdown by the contractor. Part was not available until early in the week, Monday or Tuesday, and it had to come after the storm for Nova Scotia. But for the residents of our town to have to wait 5 days for that proportion of the sidewalk of the main road to be cleared, I actually think is unacceptable. So lessons learned from this that were identified by the Deputy CAO were that there will be better communications between the contractor if there's a breakdown and the works department, such that it can possibly be rectified before the part is comes in to be fixed. And also that next year, when the town is looking after both sides, we will actually have a third trackless that it's a used one that was acquired, and we will have 2 in operation and 1 spare. So just wanted to pass that on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jim, and thank you for your diligence on that. We have a lot of walkers in our town, so the sidewalk clearing is really very important for both their quality of life and safety. So I really appreciate you going above and beyond on that issue for them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McIntosh Lawrence.
Thank you. Yeah, so like Councillor Balcom said, we had the pleasure of touring a lab in JDI in Sussex a few weeks ago. The lab was amazing. I learned a lot. But for me, I really liked the sawmill. We were only there a short period of time, but for me personally, I worked in a sawmill when I was a teenager. So just to see all the advancements now, like everything is automated and there's very little hands-on, and so that was really interesting for me. Also that day we came home, and I think most of us headed up to the municipal plan open house in Neripus. So that was a few people that came out and got to speak with them. The other thing, last week I had the pleasure of dropping in quickly to Science Fest on March 7th. That's always fun, and it was a good turnout, and I think all the kids have great questions, and everyone enjoyed themselves. And I will apologize for last weekend for canceling Astronomy Night. It was a group decision, and in hindsight, both nights were beautiful, but the weather was calling for cloudy skies, so we did cancel. But this week, Friday, March 17th, Astronomy Night, we'll try to do it again. So hope to see everyone out at Brentwood Point Friday night.
Thank you for all your work on that, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Deputy Mayor Toole.
Like everyone else, I did get the pleasure of going to the JDI sawmill and seedling lab, which, and I think I had the same reservations as Councillor Balcom with the benefit, but I loved it. I thought it was a great tour to see the innovations going on in New Brunswick, and I thought it was very valuable actually, and I agree that the fact that the land is in Ward 2, there's good benefits there for a nice partnership with us and JDI, the Woodlands Division. And I was only able to drop in very, very briefly to the planning session, but it was great. I really liked it. I was hoping more people would have attended because it was really well laid out. Like, kudos to everybody who set that up. It was really well done out in Ward 2 for that. And that was about it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Councillor Bellens.
Okay. With the same tour with you guys, Sawmill, I just like to thank Robert Fawcett for a great tour, and other than that, you already said the point. So back to Pro Kids. I wanted to see used equipment after it's all, at the end of the season, I want some hockey helmets, skates, equipment, so they'll go with the pro kids, so next year they can get a head start on have some equipment for these kids to, or get them old in, hockey or sports, so that's all I'd say to that.
Well, thank you, John, for your work on Pro Kids, that's, really appreciate that. Councillor Murphy.
So I would just like to echo everyone else's comments on the JDI tour. It was really beneficial. I also asked myself the same questions on the way there. But I was pleasantly surprised at, the facility and how efficient it is. And, there's a lot of information that I didn't realize, behind the scenes. Also, I attended the hockey game in Wellsford and it was super fun. There's no other words to describe it. It was outside and it was neighboring community and it was everybody supporting each other. So that was fun. The Science Fest at the Brundage Point River Center was an impressive group of youth. Very proud of the work. So I was really happy to have been able to make that event because they were super proud of everything that they had to show. The last thing, I'm just going to update you that there are 3 of the street lights installed and they are lovely. Thank you.
They're up already.
3 of them are up.
That's awesome.
And so 2 at Glenwater Farm, 1 bus stop is lit. It's dark again. So yeah, so super happy about that. Thank you.
That's wonderful, that's great advocacy for your ward, Councillor Murphy, you should be proud, thank you for that. I'll try and, I know we have 2 minutes, 5 minutes left?
So,
Okay, well, I'll be really fast,
6
so
minutes.
I'm not gonna reiterate anything
Can
that
I play the music after you?
the Oscars were last night, not today. So, I was on a lot of the things that the councillors have already talked about, so I won't go into those again. I referenced at the beginning of the meeting, about Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the committee meetings. So this, in advance before going to the board meeting, I had a week of virtual committee meetings. So I represent the town on Committee of the Whole, the Atlantic Caucus, the Election Readiness Working Group, the Municipal Finance and Intergovernmental Arrangements Committee, and the Increasing Women's Participation in Local Government Committee. So that was, that's always really interesting talking to my colleagues across the entire nation trying to move that work forward. I've recently been appointed to the executive of the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick as treasurer. So I've been attending a couple of onboarding meetings to make sure I can hit the ground running in that role. I attended the Funding Winterfest event at Four Corners. I think that was in the last couple of weeks, but there's been a lot of fun out in Ward 2 recently. So, so congratulations to all the organizers who did such a wonderful job. Again, and important to note, I attended the Municipal Plan Review Open House at the Nericus Baptist Church, and I enjoyed talking to the residents who did show up to talk about their vision of and priorities for the town. I attended the big game, I have to say that, because it was such a great event and I loved it, and it was really great to connect with the Wellsford Community Association and see everything that they've done in their area there, and so there's learnings and relationships that can be taken away from that. One thing I do want to mention is I had the Funding Regional Service Commission meeting today. I've had a lot of calls and emails from residents who are concerned about the odor that's currently coming from the landfill. So the purpose, one of the purposes of the meeting today was that adjustments needed to be made to the 2023 capital plan, basically moving money from borrowings to money from cash reserves, capital, and operating. Part of the redistribution was for flare refurbishment. The smell comes from landfill gas, and the flare is one of the pieces of equipment that burns that gas off to reduce the odor. The flare has been non-functional for some time now due to a breakdown and subsequent supply chain issues that have made it difficult to repair. This new allocation from today's meeting will allow for a rebuild sooner rather than later. So this, along with new landfill gas well installations planned for the spring, will result in the reduction of the landfill odor we are currently experiencing. So I would like to thank my fellow commissioners for their heartfelt support on this issue and moving this priority ahead of, way ahead of many others. So these are projects that will directly affect Grand Bay-Westfield positively. And that's my truncated council report for tonight because we only have 2 minutes. So item 15, business arising from committee of the whole. There being none, we'll move on to item 16, adjournment. And the motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield adjourn the meeting at 9:57 p.m. Motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Bailmans. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, council. It's a big meeting tonight. Thank you very much, staff. It was a very long meeting tonight, a long day for you beforehand, so I appreciate it.